License Committee to order at 6:55. I just have one quick motion. From the docket of May 21st, 2019, I entertain a motion to approve a new Class 2 license application from Vashon Motor Company, Inc., located at 957 Washington Street, to buy and sell secondhand motor vehicles as well as a repair shop.
Second.
Anyone have any questions? We have a
None.
public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. I'd like to adjourn at 6:50, oh, it's still 6:55.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Oh, that's right.
Thank you. Call this meeting of the Municipal Council to order at 7:03. Please stand and join me in a salute to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this time, I'd entertain a motion to approve the records of April 23rd, 2019.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any questions or comments? Hearing none. Roll call vote, Steve? I'll get it right sometime.
No.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Motion passes. Would you kindly read the notice for the first public hearing this evening?
Bill, public hearing relative to amending revised ordinance of the City of Attleboro, Section 10-5 parking, in order to address the signs on Sanford Street and changes to the language.
Thank you. Is there anyone here to speak in favor? Is there anyone here to speak in favor? Anyone to speak in opposition? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition? Anyone neither for nor against? Anyone neither for nor against? Hearing none. Is this in yours? Any reason to keep this public hearing open?
I do not think so. I did receive a letter from the administration. I could share it with the council, just explaining about the change, if that helps.
Great, thank you. We will close that public hearing. Mr. Withers, would you?
Yes, the second public hearing tonight is relative to the yearly operational plan submitted to the Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources by the Attleboro Parks and Forestry Department addressing vegetation management in the city, including herbicides and planned treatment.
Great, thank you. Is there anyone here to speak in favor? Anyone here to speak in favor?
Roxanne Houghton, 13 Eisenhower Street in Attleboro. I had kind of thought that the Superintendent of Parks and Forestry might speak before me, but I did meet with him yesterday with Derek Corsi, and we went over the 5-year plan. And initially, I wasn't crazy about having any chemicals or whatever. And in going through the plan, I learned a lot. I talked to people from the Department of Agriculture as well. I talked to the mayor, and I talked to Nick Wiley from Conservation, and there is going to be some initial use of chemicals, Roundup being one of them that I'm very opposed to, but it's going to be overseen. Every single application will be overseen by Derek Corsi and recorded. And as it turns out, we never had any of that recording before, so we're starting from day one. I have his word, and he's going to put that in writing. And throughout the 5-year plan, each year is going to be less and less chemicals, and he's going to put that in writing. And at the end of 5 years, we're not going to be, the goal is to be using no chemicals whatsoever in Attleboro. And I'm pretty excited about that. And I hope that the council will vote for this plan.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Houghton at this time? Thank you, Roxanne.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak in favor? Anyone here? Is she coming up? No. Anyone here to speak in opposition? Anyone here to speak in opposition? Anyone here to speak neither for nor against? Derek, this is the last time you're going to get, because I'm going to call it once, twice, you're out.
Well, I thought I would be here to field questions with the report.
So let me help you.
Okay.
We can invite you back to the committee meeting,
Yep.
but generally someone from the administration on these things that come from them, somebody generally speaks or lets me know what the plan is. So
Okay.
I thought before I closed it, if you hadn't come to one of these before, which I don't think you have, you've been before us,
Yes.
but never a public hearing. So I wanted to give you the opportunity if you wanted to offer anything to do that before I close the public hearing.
Okay. Yeah. Roxanne hit on a few points. The purpose of the vegetation management plan is to utilize chemicals in areas where it can't manually be taken care of. Areas where there's invasive vegetation such as knotweed, poison ivy, bittersweet. When those areas are manually taken care of, the solution is not completed. It usually becomes a worse situation. Knotweed tends to spread when it's cut. Poison ivy, you obviously can't send people out to cut because, they can develop the rash. So using these type of chemicals to mitigate the situation and then replant with native vegetation over the 5-year plan would eventually reduce the use of chemicals and hopefully eliminate them. So at the end of the 5-year plan, I go back to the state, we evaluate all of our records, and then we create a new 5-year plan. And this just continues every 5 years. Every year, a new vegetation plan is submitted, what we plan to do for the year. And again, that's evaluated by the state yearly and will change year to year depending on the situation we assess. Before anything is sprayed, a notice goes out to the abutters of the property 21 days prior, notifying them that it will occur. And like Roxanne said, I'll be supervising it all. Everything will be documented and recorded according to state law. And it's going to be very low doses of chemical, things that you would see in a small backpack sprayer. Something you'd pick up at Home Depot, very low dose. When people think spraying, they think of, crop dusting, guy in the back of a pickup truck with a cannon. That is not the case at all. It is a very selective use of chemicals. Most of the applications will be done via cut stem. So what we would do is we'd come in, cut the plant, and then apply the chemical. So we're not using as much chemical. We're not, draping it all over the foliage. We're basically targeting the stem of each plant. So if you guys have any questions for me in regards to it, I'd be happy to answer it.
Any questions for Derek at this time? And we can, and likely will have you before the committee. This is in Councilor Blair's committee. So any other questions or comments at this time?
I don't see any problem. I was there too at the meeting when the guy came up from the state, the gentleman from the state. And Mr. Corsi was very, very active, with him, knows what's got to be done. I feel confident that he'll take care of it in a proper manner, so.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Derek.
Thank you.
Thanks. Is there anyone else here to speak neither for nor against? Seeing none, Councilor Blair, do you see any reason to keep this public hearing open?
No.
That public hearing is also closed. We can move on to the reading of the next public hearing this evening.
The next public hearing is relative to amending Section 3 of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro as it pertains to buildings and the adoption of the Board of Building Regulations and Standards Stretch Code, 780 CMR 115.AA, and appendix to the Massachusetts State Building Code. The amendments may be reviewed at the city clerk or city council offices during regular business hours.
Thank you. Is there anyone here to speak in favor? Gary, hello. Before Gary starts, I did speak to the mayor about this, and the administration is planning to come before us with the building inspector and likely Gary again and the mayor himself to talk more specifically about the other pieces of stretch code. But with that said, Gary, thank you for
Good evening,
coming
Council
tonight.
President. Thank you for the preface. Good evening, Council President, members of Municipal Council. For the record, my name is Gary Arazian, the city's Director of Planning and Development. And at the outset, I just want to say that the Planning Department wholeheartedly supports the adoption of the stretch code. However, when this came down from the mayor's office, it kind of caught us off guard. It was kind of sudden. So Stephanie and I weren't ready to prepare to give the full-blown presentation as we normally have. As you recall, we spearheaded the effort twice before. Unfortunately, for one reason or another, they didn't pass. We want to take a third shot at it this time. Mayor Huru supports it. So I'd like to ask respectfully if you would continue the public hearing tonight. We'll return in 2 weeks. The building inspector, myself, and Stephanie. And I understand that there's already been a presentation on this. So we could do a little of that next time, but what I wanted to concentrate on, and I had a conversation with Council Holmes on this, really concentrate on what the impact would be to the city of Attleboro. And not necessarily just the stretch code. I know the stretch code is one aspect that has municipal council has jurisdiction over, but please remember, there are 5 elements to becoming a green community. So while this aspect of it is to amend the ordinance, Chapter 3, over which you have jurisdiction, let's not lose sight of the other 4 aspects of it too. So we want to come back and we'll talk about the stretch code, but we also want to speak about the other elements of it, how those will impact the city of Attleboro. Also as important is the implementation of the green communities. Something that we slightly touched on base with Mayor Huru, and he understands the gravity of that. Just a little foresight on this is one of the elements is we have to, within 5 years, if we choose to adopt the stretch code and move forward as a green community, over the course of the next 5 years, we have to reduce our overall energy consumption, just the government side of it, not the city itself, just the government side, by 20%. It's going to be a lift. We need a plan for that. We need an implementation strategy. And again, because this came down kind of sudden, we weren't ready tonight to come and explain that, and I certainly wasn't about to give you just a superficial presentation. So for that, I asked if we could continue the hearing. And the other piece too is, what do the grants mean? What types of grants? We talk about climate change and resiliency. So what kinds of grants, how much of those grants, how we plan to utilize those grants. So again, I'd like to come back in 2 weeks and have a handout and offer a more detailed presentation.
Perfect. Thank you, Gary. Any questions for Gary at this time? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor?
Good evening. My name is Paul Denese. I reside at 15 Musket Road. I'm also the current chairman of the planning board. However, the planning board's not taken a position on this amendment. This proposal was brought before the council some years ago when the state began formalizing its green community program. It was not passed because of its suspected adverse impact on building costs and subsequent housing prices. At the time that we were bringing this forth, we were still in the recession of 2008. However, today, many of the stretch code specifications have already been incorporated into the state uniform building code, reducing the cost difference. The economy has continued to strengthen, and right now, the housing demand in Attleboro right now exceeds the supply. So this is actually a perfect time to adopt this change without creating undue difficulty in the building code or in the housing prices. Further, the adoption of the stretch building code has already been adopted by 240 communities. As of the beginning of this year, over 80% of our Massachusetts residents live in communities that have passed the stretch code. So Attleboro is right now in a minority. So at one point we were going to lead, and now we're behind. This stretch building code satisfies, as Gary pointed out, one of the 5 criteria needed to qualify our community as a green community. The stretch code, although it's seen as a standalone thing, it's really part of the objective is to minimize the life cycle costs of our homes, which also tries to satisfy the 30 and 40-year-old structures we have now in the city. Hopefully 30 or 40 years from now, if we adopt the stretch code, these houses will still be viable and so forth. So without this green designation, the Attleboro faces difficulty going forward in getting its share of the money available from the state to address energy conservation and climate change resilience. As an example, the money is identified for these purposes. Governor Baker, a couple of weeks ago, announced that he's working on an additional $1 billion bond issue with the Senate, targeted for year-end approval for community grants going forward for capital projects on climate resilience. So the state is committed to a lot of money focused on conservation and climate resilience. Now, the remaining 4 criteria required to attain green community designation zoning ordinances to streamline energy conservation investments and enterprises. It deals, as Gary pointed out, with municipal department gains in efficiency, whether it's electric vehicles or, LED lights, et cetera. Much of this groundwork's already been done. Additional effort's going to be required to gain the designation, but the effort's not insurmountable. And as Texas Senator Phil Graham used to say, I am against unnecessary government spending, but if they're going to spend it, I'm damn well sure we're going to get our share. So my recommendation is let's set a plan to complete the steps to become a green community, starting with adopting the stretch code, and get our share. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions? Council Conti?
Thank you, Paul, for coming in and giving us your opinion. You mentioned something that I've not heard before regarding the stretch code, and it was regarding extended life of the structure. Can you tell me where you got that information?
The criteria is actually not go adopt the stretch code. The criteria is to identify ways of extending the reducing the cost of a structure of a home, of living in that home, over its lifespan.
So it's not a expansion of the life of the structure?
No, it's make the cost of having that structure for 40 years cheaper to the homeowner.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you. Thanks,
Thank
Paul.
you.
Thank you, Paul.
Is there anyone else here to speak in favor?
Good evening, Bill Bowles, 65 Norgate Road in Attleboro. I'm coming, actually, I concur with virtually everything that Paul Denisi said, but I'd like to reemphasize, the question is, well, can we afford to do this? And I would say that we cannot afford not to do it, because the bond issue that the governor is going to be working on for $1 billion, and there's already a lot of grants out there that are available, and other communities who have adopted this stretch goal are recipients of these grant monies. So it seems pretty straightforward to me that this is the right thing to do. It also, the mass building codes have already been changed, and my understanding is they're going to continue to change to make these requirements to create these requirements. So we're going to have to do it anyway. So just from a pure economic standpoint, it would be much more economical for the city to accept this and participate in the grants to help implement these efficiencies. And in doing this, there's also going to be other benefits to the question that Councilor Conti just asked. The issue is not whether you're going to make a structure last 70 years instead of 50 years, but if you can make the cost to the homeowner less because of energy efficiency over the years, then that's money that doesn't have to come out of the homeowner's pocket to pay for fuel, extra fuel and electricity, and that's a benefit, and it's going to benefit citizens who get this. And lastly, you look at the price of new homes in Attleboro, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 is not uncommon. So if you're talking about a cost to verify the efficiency, let's say that it's $5,000. That's peanuts. And when somebody's buying a house, whether the amount's $550,000 or $555,000, it's not significantly different. And there's in my mind, tremendous benefits. So I would urge the council to accept these stretch goals.
Great. Any, Council Conti, then Council Blair?
So, Bill, thank you for coming. The city of Attleboro will not get a grant if we adopt the stretch code, and that's really the only issue this public hearing is about, is just the stretch code, not everything else that's in the green community. If we adopt the stretch code, I don't believe we get any grants. Is that your understanding?
No, with all due respect, I think you're incorrect.
Okay.
The grants are available for this, but you have to have adopted the stretch goal to participate in the grants. So if Gary's department, for example, writes a grant and tries to participate in it by accepting the stretch goal, I don't know if we can or can't. My understanding is that we would have to have accepted the stretch goal to participate in that grant. That would be one of the requirements. But there would be grants available that the city could apply for. Let's say, just for the sake of argument, the city wanted to go to electric vehicles for some of the some of the people who get vehicles. And the city could write a grant and request money to pay the difference between what a non-electric vehicle and what an electric vehicle would be. So we'd be able to participate in those grants.
And so your understanding is that we could do that by adopting the stretch code only, even if we don't do all the other things to become a green community?
My understanding is if you adopt the stretch goal, that allows us to participate in the grant. Now, when you accept this, there are other requirements to go with it. For example, the verification that a residence meets the energy efficiency goals, and there's other requirements that fall on the city that as Gary said, they're falling on the city anyway. We have to be, I think he said 20%, we have to reduce our energy consumption by 20%. So some of these things we have to do those anyway. The question is, do we want, if we have to do those anyway, wouldn't we want to be in a position where we could participate in grants that would help us to achieve that?
Thank you, Mr. President.
Any other, Councilor Blair?
Bill, I think, from what I understood when Gary was up there, in order to participate for these grants, we have to be a green community. The stretch code is part of that the requirements to become a green community. Just by accepting the stretch code doesn't make us eligible for state grants. And one other question, where did you come up with the $5,000 on $550,000 home increase?
I can't remember my source, but I did talk to a lot of people. I did ask somebody what would be the additional cost to a homeowner, and they said that that it would be approximately $5,000 to verify the energy efficiency of a residence. It isn't that the money is being used to do something. It's you hire somebody to say, do my windows meet this energy efficiency thing?
Excuse me, if you could please get back to the question. You've come before us before with statistics, and you don't justify the statistics. That's what I was asking you. When you said it's $5,000 on a $550,000 home, what I asked you was, where did you get that statistic?
I thought I did answer that.
No, you didn't. You said somebody.
Yeah. I can't produce my source.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Bowles? Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak in favor?
Evening. Dale Riem, 18 Wood Street, Attleboro. So I did have the privilege to be at last week's presentation by Nick Connors of the Green Communities Initiative. And I understand that the topic is limited this evening just to the stretch codes. And so in my opinion, I understand that there's a number of steps involved with achieving green community designation, but I really think the basis of pursuing that really starts right here with the stretch codes. And really, why would we be considering it if we weren't? So I'll limit my comments to stretch code. So I do understand that there will be requirements for implementing technologies into new construction. This does not apply to existing structures, remodeling, renovations, additions. So I think it's very safe to say that the increase in construction costs would just be limited there. But then let's consider, I don't have the numbers, I think Bill does, but he won't divulge his sources. But the investment in these energy savings will be significant to increasing the value of new construction, and I'm hopeful will contribute to our tax base as well, which I think is much needed. I will limit my comments to just the stretch code, but I do want to say I support green communities, and I think that this is a first step to achieving that goal. And I really hope that the council will vote to accept these changes to our ordinance. I do look forward to further comments, hopefully from our building commissioner. I'm sure he's the best situated to answer some of the questions that might be of concern to some folks as to what the true costs will be to the folks footing the bill to implement those changes.
Thank you. Any questions? Council Conti?
I have a question. Why do you suppose the stretch code has to be a government mandate rather than a market-driven development? In other words, right now, the building code we have is the minimum requirements. The stretch code is the minimum requirements at a higher level.
Yes.
Right now, you wanted to build a house, I wanted to build a house, and we wanted it to be uber energy efficient.
Yes.
We could find a builder to build that house because the technology exists, and it would be
Yes.
better than the stretch building code. But that doesn't seem to be what's happening. It doesn't seem that people are asking builders to build houses that are more energy efficient that meet their HERS rating, but rather the government has to step in with a government mandate and says, pass this bill so that everyone has a minimum has to have this standard. Why do you suppose it has to be a government mandate and not a market-driven development?
I'm going to base that on my desire to be a green community. And the requirement to be a green community, which is not part of this hearing, I understand, but this is really where I am putting my support behind stretch. Now, I understand the HERS rating. I don't know. I know that, as part of the presentation last week, that rather than the prescriptive method of verifying the implementation of energy efficiency construction methods, there is the requirement for the performance aspect of it, where you actually will contract with independent contractors, subcontractors that will go in and actually measure and determine for certain what that HERS rating is. And for me as a consumer, I think that would be very valuable, so that I know for certain this is the promised rating of this construction plan, and it has proven out to be so before I take ownership.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Council Dolan?
Just a comment. So I agree with everything you're saying, and I think when it comes to the government forcing us to do this, so the base code right now is government forced, right? So they make us do what the base code is. And a lot of times when you build a house, you don't, not everybody goes out and builds a house from scratch. You have a developer that creates a whole cul-de-sac, 10 houses, 20 houses. You don't necessarily get to pick and choose everything that's done. So they build this, you say, I want that one right there, and they build it to their specifications. So as far as being government-driven versus market-driven, I think that's the case. Because I know when I bought my house, I didn't have a choice on the efficiency. And I would have paid the extra $5,000, $7,000, $1,200, whatever it was.
Well, I guess you could argue, why do we have the base? Why couldn't we just leave it market-driven and not even
Right,
have the
which is
base?
government-driven.
Well, that's public safety, but we're not going there right now. So, did you have a follow-up question, Council Conti?
No, I'm gonna let it go.
All right. Any other questions or comments?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor?
Roxanne Houghton, 13 Eisenhower Street in Attleboro. I am definitely supporting this, and maybe to go to a comment that Councilor Tabler made, that we're not going to just adopt the stretch code and get a huge check the next day, but we have to start somewhere. This is the year 2019, and it's very important, not just for us. I mean, I don't know all the inner workings, not all the nuts and bolts of everything to do with this. I know a lot of it, and I spoke to some people at the EPA, and I asked them, what's the downside? Because whenever the state wants to give you money, you have to know why they're giving you money. And there really is no downside. It's becoming like a member of the world of nations, only Attleboro joining the other communities and coming into this century, really. And I guess I look at my opinion, the role of the city council isn't just to take care of us today, what we want today, what feels good today. It's taking care of the next generation. I mean, all our energy is finite. It's not always going to be there, and we should be doing everything that we can to preserve it. I think about a couple years ago when I was in a very bad place financially, and I couldn't afford to pay my electric bill. I had no idea what I was going to do. So I had a little money in the bank, and I went to the Home Depot, and this is the honest to God's truth, and I bought those light bulbs that you put to save electricity, and my electric bill went from like $130 to $50 a month, and that's just one little house in Attleboro. And multiply that by what, 20,000? The fire station, the police station. And you know, when I talked to the people at the EPA, you know, we talked about how the council often talks about, we need a teacher, we need a firefighter, we need something for the fire department, for the police department. And I know you can't take this money and use it to hire a teacher or whatever, but the money that you save when the air conditioner breaks down at one of the schools, we'll have that money to pay for that, to fix it. And that enables us to do other things that we need to do. So, and I think that anybody that has reservations about this as being wildly progressive, I think, you know, I saw a picture of Senator Feeney yesterday presenting a check to Seekonk. Norton has done this. They're wonderful communities, but they're not super progressive. And I think that I want to be part of that. And I think that everybody in Attleboro deserves to be part of that. That money that we get back in grants, that's our money. We've already paid that money to the state. They're giving it back to us to use for the good. And I see absolutely no reason to vote against this except to keep, it would keep us from moving forward. And one last thought I thought about, we're building a very expensive new high school, and everybody wanted us to build this, spend this money on this high school. And one of the reasons was to attract new young families and so forth. Well, these new young families coming to Attleboro deserve to be I don't know how to put it, but with the times. I mean, we don't want to have all these young families coming to Attleboro and still be lagging behind. I don't want to be in the caboose. I want to be in the engine. And I'm a big believer in preserving our resources, no matter what it is. I've spoken about this before. And we need to think about not just ourselves, but the future. And I would ask that you support this.
Thank you.
Council Conti, oh, that's it.
So, Councilor Houghton,
Oh, no.
I, for a moment, thought I heard you supporting shifting dollars saved from adopting the stretch code and reducing our energy costs and moving that into a capital improvements line item.
No,
That's not what you were saying.
No, what I was saying was that, as was said to me, the money that we
Shucks.
save, no, well, yes, in a sense, because the money that we save, the check that we will eventually receive, can't be used on a capital improvements, but the money that we save will allow us to do things with our capital improvements. And you know I care about our capital improvements.
So my follow-up question is, would you support an amendment to the adoption of the stretch code that the dollars saved in the energy savings be shifted towards a capital improvement line item?
I don't think you can do that. I don't think that would be legal. I don't know, but I don't think it would be legal. That could be a trick question.
It's a stretch, that's what it is.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Houghton at this time?
Jeez, it's creepy.
Sometimes you gotta stretch, you know?
Any other, is there anyone else here to speak in favor? Anyone else here to speak in favor? Is there anyone to speak in opposition? Anyone to speak in opposition?
Good evening, members of the council. Mr. President, my name is Joe Capnigo, and I live at 903 Pike Avenue, and I'm here to speak in opposition to the adoption of the stretch code. Before I get into some of the particulars, and I've said this many times before the council, Attleboro should be a leader. It doesn't have to follow other communities just because other communities have done it. And I did have a discussion earlier with Mr. Denesi, and the 89% that he mentioned live in cities that have the stretch code is probably true, but not 89% of the residents of Massachusetts live in houses that have been built under the stretch code. And when we're building houses, I just want to address another thing that Councilwoman Dolan said. When you build a house, most builders, when they're building a subdivision or a single house on a lot, will offer speculation houses. That's where the builder does not have a contract to build a house, so he builds a house to his specification. He picks the plans, and picks the specifications. Almost all builders that I know, also build as far as a custom house. That is where they come to me, choose a lot, and says, here's the style of house I want, and here's what I want to put into it. And that's probably the most important. One of my objections to the adoption of the stretch code is it should be up to the client, up to that person that's building the house, or up to that person that's enlarging their house to the point that it has to come underneath the stretch code. It should be their choice whether to do that or not. It shouldn't be mandated by government. Who is the government to say to that person, building a house, you have to exceed the reasonable codes that we have now? And speaking of the codes we have now, is what we call a HERS rating that is in the stretch code. That isn't a lot of difference from the res check that we have to do presently now. A HERS, as far as rated that you're going to be, a person is going to be spending $1,000, $1,500 on, comes in and checks maybe a few more items out. But these are things that we have, as far as a res check, and I'll present that and I'll make more copies, for the next year. That's a res check on a house that I'm building on Greenfield Street right now. We have to show what's going in the walls, what type of windows we're putting in, the energy efficiency, and there are all these criteria that we have to meet a certain, guideline that is in the code right now. And I feel that is, sufficient for the average person, the reasonable person, to go by. This stretch code is, and I got to change glasses to read sometimes these days, but as far as the stretch code, it's how is it reasonable that whether it's the state or the city or a town, mandates to these people to spend $3,000, $6,000, $8,000 or more in the construction of their house so that the city or town can get grants. If these grants are so good, why isn't the state giving the city the grants in the beginning? Why are they forcing people, by means of the stretch code, to spend more money? And I believe it was Mr. Bowles said, well, $5,000 on a $550,000 house isn't that much. And percentage-wise, it isn't, but it's still $5,000. And $5,000 or $8,000, or I think there's larger figures out there too, when added on to the mortgage, is tripled by the time you add your interest on. So if it's costing you $8,000 more, just today, in the long run, it's costing you $24,000. And forget about interest and extrapolating all that, but if you're saving $500 a year, which would probably is a notation that I think I saw online in in an adoption at Fars and Worcester, that's a 48-year payback. Is that reasonable? And when does it come to the point that it's also that a city or a town or the state should be involved? I thought the city was for the for the welfare, for the safety, as far as people, not to say you got to spend more money so we can get more money. That's almost like an indirect tax as far as I'm concerned. And it really should be looked at that way. You're picking on a certain percentage of the people, whether it's a person that lives in the city and is building a new house or somebody moving into the city. You're picking on a certain percentage of the people to spend their money so that the city can get more money. That's taxation. And that should be looked into. And as other people have mentioned, a lot of what we're doing underneath the current code is part of the stretch codes things, such as the blower door test. There's a part of the code now that we have to build houses so tight, and I've been in building, since I was a teenager. We were always taught the houses have to breathe somewhat, but they're being built so tight now that as part of the testing we have to do, it's called a blower door test. There's a contraption with a fan they put in the a door of the house after everything's completed, and it sucks air out of the house, and it's registered how fast that can suck out of the house. And if it doesn't pass, you have to go around and start caulking more. I've heard of builders, they have to caulk, or start pulling outlets out and caulking it as far as electrical outlets and everything. I do my own a lot of that myself before it's boarded, and so then you have to keep on going until it passes. And this is the blower door test that's under the present code. If it passes, in most houses now, we have to have a bathroom fan that's regulated up, generally the bathroom fan is on 24 hours a day. So where does the logic come with that? The houses have to be built so tight that now you have to have other mechanical means as far as pulling fresh air. When I was with the family business back in the late 80s, I'd forget if it was Dow Chemical or Owings Corning, but it was one of the insulation places, took one of the more common back then, I should say the late 70s, early 80s, but it was the 4424 raised ranches, and they super insulated it, just almost as they're talking with the stretch code and close to what they're talking about the houses that we're building today. And it actually, they said it isn't cost efficient. Why? Because the cost, you're going to have to put it in there, and as part of the present code, in a lot of instances, you have to put in an air heat exchanger that sucks the cold air out, the hot air out, or the inside air out, so you get fresh air, exchange the heat in, brings in the outside air. And there's an expense, and so at that time they said the cost of the electricity just to run those offsets any savings. You've got to have this running all the time or at certain times. So, as far as for that reasons, the stretch code, if a person wants it, as was talked about, let the person say, yes, I want it, but don't force the person to get it. That's outside, I think, the governmental responsibilities to the average citizen. I understand when these grants, and as one of our speakers really said, the city wants to get their share. But
it's the taxpayers' money that they're getting the share of. Again, it should change at the state level that if they're floating these bonds, it was mentioned the governor's going to make $1 billion bond or something like that. Where's that money coming from? That's coming from us, the taxpayers. Why are they making us the taxpayers? I'm going to stay in my own house forever, I think, but any of the new taxpayers or the new people moving into a town, why are they making them pay extra just so that we can get our money back, we can get our share of it back? That's a problem with the state. It shouldn't be approached that you make the citizens do something or else I'm not going to, to give you the money back. And this is going back to one of my first things. Let Attleboro really, be the leader in this. Maybe this can become as far as statewide. If maybe some of these cities and towns, if it all bands together, and this is probably a pipe dream, but say to the state, no, we're not going to adopt the stretch code because we think that we should have that funding anyways. If you're going to fund the bond that's being paid by the citizens, why are you charging the citizens extra just to get part of that bond? I just have some notes. There's a reason behind this also that has to be looked into. Why is it mandated that these new citizens, for any reason, have to spend this extra money? Or somebody, and I'm not pointing fingers at but some industry or some entity is making money on this. Otherwise, why would you say to the citizen, you have to spend money for us to give you money? Somebody's making money on the end run. It's this outside influences on a lot of these laws that say, let's force them to use a HERS rate, or let's force them to use that 95% as far as efficient furnace instead of the 92% furnace. I see this all too often in building. We have some building codes now, and part of it is good, and I'm just going to use joist hangers for an instance. We have to use multiple joist hangers, and a lot of it is good because as far as they were needed. But we have to put 8 joist hangers around a scuttle hole. I've never seen in 50 years, maybe our building inspector has seen a scuttle hole fail, but I've never seen a scuttle hole fail. But when they first came out with this, when they come out with some of these other laws that I've seen along the way, it's because somebody is benefiting from it. Some industry is benefiting from it, and that I'm dead against. There's been 3 things since I've been around in building that have really improved the situation. That was smoke detectors, what they call GFI outlets in the kitchens and bathrooms, and pressure-treated wood. Some of these other ones, such as increased insulation, when it's reasonable and you want to bring a standard in, that's fine, but don't force people to extend, go past a reasonable standard. After the presentation in 2 weeks, I would like to comment some more, but I know that from what's speaking, the planning department's going to be looking into it. But the city's got to give very, very close attention to what this is going to cost the city once these grants run out. And we were speaking about as far as the house, it's going to save the citizen 50 years from now because the house is more efficient. But what's it going to cost the city for all these electric cars and to reduce as far as energy consumption? Give a very, very close look at that. I don't know the answer to that, but it's going to cost us something because it isn't given for free. And somebody's got to be benefiting, from it. And so that's the biggest thing. I hate to see things forced on the average citizen when it's because some of these, I'm not going to, as far as I'm using the word, as far as improper laws, but some of these proposals, some of these requirements are put out there because there's an industry or there's a benefit to somebody else. If this was, as far as the green community, the city or the state wants to give us money or give any community money, it should be given without any restrictions as demanding that the citizens do something that it isn't due to the health, safety, or the welfare. I know I'm missing some things, but that's about in general what I'm as why I'm against it. Is because it's an intrusion into the citizenry,
number one. And if and if you want the green community, that's fine, but let the citizens decide on it. The other thing I'm going to say, in what really upsets me about this, not only the stretch code, but this green thing in general, is it's like putting a lollipop out there to the to the cities and towns. We'll give you this, so long as you make these people do that or pay for that. And it's a select member of it's a select portion of the citizenry that are going to have to do this. If one's got to do it, everybody should do it. I'm sorry for getting on ramble.
Councilor Holmes, Dolan, and then Conti.
Thank you for coming. How many houses do you build a year, would you say?
I'm downsizing right now. I probably built 3 to 4 as far as a year. In my lifetime, I've been involved with over 1,000.
Yes. Okay, so 3 or 4 a year now. And as you mentioned, the stretch code and the actual building code are very close right now. So I'm wondering, do any buyers currently ask for this? Are buyers requesting that to confirm that their home is energy efficient? Or?
Not in the houses I build. Right now I build mainly in the $450,000 to $375,000 range. And what I do is I explain how I insulate, and it's very good. In fact, I built a house in Taunton about 1.5 years ago, and they said, "How come that fan's running?" I said, "Oh, that's part of the code," and I had to explain to them why it is. But if somebody did ask me, such as the house I'm building one on Greenfield Street right now, and it's pre-sold, it's just got the foundation, and if they came in and said, "Yes, this is what we want," I would say, "Well, here's the cost, and yes, I will put it in for you."
Okay. I think that concludes my questions. Thank you. Thank you for coming in.
Hi. So that res check that you gave us, I only had a quick second to look at it. Is that part of the base code now?
Yes, it is.
So, and again, I only looked at it quickly, that shows the efficiency of the windows, so that's mandated.
That's mandated now, but that is also something, Councilwoman Dolan, that I do on my own, and most builders can do on their own.
Oh, sure.
We don't have to pay a HERS rate of $1,200 or $1,500 to do that for us.
Okay, so, but that shows the efficiency, and that's part of the
Yes.
base code. So there is a mandate for energy and not just
Yes, there is.
safety?
Yes.
Like when you were talking about the joists
Yes.
and stuff like that.
I only spoke about the, the joist hangers because, to the point that it was put in there, and, just some entities is selling more product now as a result.
Sure, I understand. So as far as spending money to get money in the investment, I feel that, I respectfully disagree with the point of, that we're picking on a certain group of people. Like, I feel like it's new homes because we have to start somewhere. So instead of going back and mandating that people that have a house that was built in 1964, that they get up to this stretch code and cost them money. And when you stated about, so, we have mandates, we have emissions for cars. You can't get your sticker if you don't pass certain,
Safety related.
Safety and emissions.
Safety related, again, due to pollution.
Right, which comes to health, safety, and welfare.
Right.
So I think it's kind of all together. When we talk about emissions for cars, it's about pollution, and pollution's about health, safety, and welfare of the people. So I just don't think that we're necessarily picking on people because it's a new house. It just feels like, to me, adopting something like this would be, that's where we need to start, is moving forward.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Is there a question?
I humbly disagree, but
Do you have a question, Joe?
Okay, well, I thought it was questions or comments. So I did have a question.
Comments don't come from.
I had the question of if that was part of the code, that res check. So yes, thank you
Yes,
for
it is.
answering my question.
Any other questions?
No, I'm good.
And
Thank
I'm
you
not
for
saying people are picking on it, but they're mandating the new home buyer or the person that does more than 30% to their existing house to come up to this. They're mandating it. It's our money, it's our citizens' money for these grants. Why do you have to mandate certain citizens to do things just to get our own money?
Councilor Conti.
Thank you. One question. Have you ever, in your history, built a house that met the minimum standard of the new stretch code?
No.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Caponegro? Thank you, Joe.
And just in closing, remember, Attleboro can be the leader. It doesn't have to do just, because of what other towns have done.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak in opposition? Any-
Good evening. My name is Bill Ward. I'm a local builder here in Attleboro. I'm really not here to complain about that perhaps I neither for nor against. I've been building houses in Attleboro for close to 30 years. Joe has brought up some very good points. My issue with this is really government mandating exactly what you're going to, requiring something that's more than the building code. The people that develop these codes, it's done every so often, maybe every 5 years these are updated. A lot of the stuff that's in the stretch code now is already being mandated in Massachusetts. If you go to the stretch code, there is additional things that would be required that would obviously cost more to build a house. One of my reasons for getting up here tonight was really, I know Mr. Bowles had mentioned how much more it would cost. I have a pretty good idea how much it would cost, and I can get into a little bit of the detail. But first of all, I just want to explain, if you pass the stretch code, you have to hire someone which is a HERS rater. It's an energy efficiency person that would actually rate your home, how the lower the score, the more energy efficient it would be. You could put a solar array on your house and you could have a very, very low score because you're basically your carbon footprint, you're getting energy from the sun. You could have perhaps lousy insulation in your house, but you're going to have a great rating because you get the solar array. You could do it with geothermal heating, a geothermal heat pump that actually extracts water from the ground. Very expensive. These are very expensive options. People could choose to do it, but most people don't because they're very expensive. The HERS rating, if the stretch code was passed, it's got to be less than 55. I've been building houses a number of years. Lately, I can't remember the last first-time home buyer I've built. We tend to cater to perhaps move-up buyers, and a lot of the stuff that I do when a house is kind of already cooked into it ahead of time. Mr. Conti had mentioned something, a market-driven thing. People that buy a house from us typically expect that there'd be a higher energy efficiency ratio on their house, very low HERS score. We're very close to the 55 HERS score now, but not quite there. We would have to make additional improvements to houses that we're building now. A house that we've been building over the past couple of years here in Attleboro, an inexpensive one is probably $550, $575. We sold one this past year that was over $750,000 in Attleboro, which is a pretty good clip for a house here. The things that would have to be improved if the stretch code was passed, obviously you have to hire that HERS rater, the person that's going to actually come out and test the performance of the house. Ms. Dolan, you had asked a question about the res check versus the HERS. The res check is basically you're taking the particulars of the windows, the prescriptive rating of the insulation, and you're putting those components together into a little computer program, and it kind of spits out what the efficiency of that house is. Well, the HERS rater actually goes out and actually tests it. They drive the car. They do a blower door test. They do duct testing. It tells them a lot more actually how efficient the houses are. HERS rater somewhere between $1,000 to $1,400 to perform that test in a house. Currently, duct testing is required by code now. Typically, the fossil fuel burning appliances, whether it be natural gas or oil, you're going to have to upgrade that equipment to high efficiency equipment. It could range from $1,500 to maybe $3,000. You're going to typically upgrade the insulation as well, higher grade insulation, lower air exchanges in the house. Lower air exchanges means you have to mechanically ventilate. Joe had brought up the point of, if you're closing in the house, you're gonna have to actually you gotta let the house breathe, you gotta mechanically ventilate the house. Air heat exchangers, typically anywhere from $2,500 to $3,500. I think the point I'm trying to get to, you could see with the stretch code from a code compliant house today versus a stretch code house, you might be between $5,000 and $10,000 additional cost depending on the size of the house. I had mentioned we build houses now, we don't quite meet the stretch code now, and we're building fairly expensive houses now. So the point I wanted to bring up is you're somewhere in that range. It's gonna cost more to build a house. I'll be the last one to complain about energy efficiency. I'm building my own house right at this moment. I haven't just recently, and I've decided to upgrade the heating system to a radiant heat system because it's very, very efficient. I'm paying the long-term cost to maintain and pay for the energy in that particular house, but that's a choice I make. No one's telling me to do that. No one's requiring me to do that. Joe had mentioned a couple of good items. The word that came to mind was diminishing returns. If you're going to be required to do all this stuff, are you going to get that return? Is it going to take 48 years to recover it? I don't know, but and the res check versus the HERS rating. That's about all I have to say at this point. If anyone has any questions, we'd be more than happy to answer.
Thank you, Bill. In condominiums and single-family residences or multifamily residences, about how many do you build a year?
Typically, the houses I'll build anywhere from 10 to 15 houses a year, and condominiums over the past couple of years, we're in excess of 20 a year, so quite a bit.
So that is quite a bit. So you were dancing around the code. Have you ever built a house that would have met the minimum standards of the stretch code?
I'm building one now in Raynham that's gonna probably exceed it. So, but the house is over $1 million. It's over $1 million to build it. It's people ask me to do that. That's what they want, and that's what they're paying for.
So this is one person out of 50 this year.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Ward at this time? Thanks, Bill.
All right, great, thanks.
Is there anyone else here to speak in opposition? Anyone else here to speak in opposition? Is there anyone neither for nor against?
I've been hearing my name a lot, so I figured I'd come up and talk. As Gary mentioned earlier, I kind of got caught off guard with this as well. So I would like to have the opportunity to come back with Gary and his staff in the next couple of weeks to give it, be a part of that presentation. But I wanted to make sure if anybody had any questions of me, they could. I knew you would. So that's why I came up.
So, Bill, when you come back, would you give some thought to that stretch code and the changes it's going to bring to the department so that we can be informed of any additional costs that might be brought into your department as a result of the stretch code? Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. McDonough at this time?
We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Vice President Rebecca.
Thank you, President Cooper. Thanks for being here tonight, Bill. One of the other things that maybe you could bring up when you come back is I know we've done many retrofit, or maybe being that I missed Gary's portion of this, between either one of your departments, if we could have a listing of the retrofit projects that we've done over the course of the last couple of years, whether it's the schools, streetlights, municipal buildings, things like that, because that part, we're spending a lot of time specifically talking about the stretch code and accepting the stretch code, but the other part of it is the acceptance of the green communities, which there are requirements that the city of Attleboro would have to meet towards that. So if there's a possibility for us to have that kind of information as well, because that will affect our, if we have to meet a 20% reduction, and we've already retrofitted the majority of the city, and we have to start from scratch. I would just like to have that information.
Yeah, as Gary mentioned before,
I came late to the game, sorry.
No, as Gary mentioned before, the other fingers of the green community stuff, he'd like to bring up stuff about that. I'm solely really here for the stretch code part of it, because it's part of the building code. So, I mean, like, there was a lot of things said here, a lot of good information, some, questionable, but it all can be sorted out, and I just wanted to make sure that we're totally prepared to answer all of your questions exactly correct.
Thank you. Any other, Council Conte?
It occurred to me, Bill, in your career as a building inspector, protective services inspector, have you ever seen a home built to the proposed stretch code?
In my community where I've worked, no, but you have to understand, we don't get HERS ratings in. You can use a HERS rater. To build a house today, you still need, as they passed around the res check, it all goes with the insulation part of the whole inspection and the permit. At the end of the job, you still need to get a blower-door test. You still need to show that you're in compliance with all that. You can do that with a HERS rater now, or you can use it with a certified person. Most people go with the certified person because it's less money. So I wouldn't know if any of them would pass a HERS rating, because I think we may have gotten one or two that came in just for the blower-door part of it, not over the whole thing. They had a HERS rated to do the blower-door test. So there could have been a house that made it. We just wouldn't know factually. Now, I do think that, a part of this whole initiative is for renewable energy. They keep bringing that number down because they want people to help out and put in some renewable energy. That's why they give you those trade-offs, where they raise that HERS rating up. So I think that's one of the big initiatives of what they're doing.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. McDonough? Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak neither for nor against? Anyone else neither for nor against? We're going to continue.
Tell Joe he can't come back.
I've just got a first question, Mr. President. I know quite commonly, once you've spoken at a hearing, you're not allowed to speak again, but I was wondering, because we haven't heard the presentation from the city, if in 2 weeks when we'll be able to make comments on any part of their presentation.
You won't, but you can submit them in writing.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the council? Seeing none, we're going to continue this public hearing until June 18th.
Sounds good, thank you.
Would you kindly read the notice for the next public hearing?
Yes, next public hearing is relative to the request that the council declare surplus and available for disposition the old Richardson School at 95 Pine Street.
Thank you. Is there anyone here to speak in favor? Evening, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you, thank you to the City Council. I am here to speak in advocating that the city declare the old Richardson School surplus city property so that the city may eventually sell this property. The comments that I am making are in my capacity as mayor, not as the president of CDA, Community Development of Attleboro Incorporated. So the position of CDA as a board is different than the position that I'm speaking of right now. I just want to be clear about that at the outset. But before I start to talk about the building, I want to talk about the tenants in the building first, who have been using Richardson School. Various social service, nonprofit agencies offer critical services to Attleboro residents and beyond. Their contribution to our community is as great as their hearts are big. In my nearly 7 years in elected office, I've personally referred Attleboro residents to these services many times. I cannot underscore the importance of their service and contribution to the city. You'll hear all about the services that they provide when various organizations speak in opposition to the city selling this building, which brings me to my discussion tonight. As mayor of the city, I believe that it's my fiduciary duty to act in the best interest of what limited resources the city has. Simply put, the revenues that the Richardson School takes in are insufficient to meet the operating expenses, and that is after CDA Board, Community Development of Attleboro,
raised rent 33%, a decision that the CDA board did not take lightly. The CDA board was formed many years ago to accept donations and administer said donations on behalf of city residents. It was not intended to be a management company, which is what it has become. It is my belief that the city should minimize, if not eliminate, its role as a landlord owner of property. Expensive fixes to city property that the city is not using fall to city taxpayers. That's a problem. For example, between 2016 and 2017, the building had a deficit of $7,000. Between 2017 and 2018, the deficit increased to $11,000. And between 2018 and 2019, the deficit swelled to $32,000. The CDA board hired a service professional to try to do as many in-house repairs as to the building as we could, or as it could, avoiding costly contractor fees. The CDA board has done what it could over the years to maintain this building, but year after year, the expenses have grown and will continue to grow. The CDA board will go over some of those pressing repairs later on when they speak. If we spend city revenues to fix up this building, we are going to have to defer the capital needs of police, fire, DPW, park and forestry, and the school department. The only way to pay for the expensive repairs that this building needs, Richardson School needs, is through free cash. As I said earlier, these various nonprofits perform critical services. It is also true that under the current financial condition, the taxpayers of the city are subsidizing these nonprofits and have been for a long time. There are several benefits to selling this building. First, the city would have immediate revenue to pay for long overdue capital needs for any number of city departments. Second, selling this building to a housing developer, it would put the building back on the city's tax rolls, bringing in a new steady stream of revenue to the city. And this is something I would like to see happen with the building, and we could put a deed restriction on it for any number of reasons, but one of which would be that the building could be sold for adaptive reuse of affordable housing on the east side, much like the Bliss School is over by Sturdy. In addition to the deed restriction of that particular type of use, we would also put a deed restriction on to preserve the facade and character of the building. If we sell this building sooner than later, we will be selling it at a time when the repairs will not be as great than they will eventually become, ultimately making it easier to sell this property for affordable housing. The opponents to the sale of this building are going to tell you how important their services are, and that's very true. We don't deny that, but that's not the issue we're talking about. They may even tell you that the CDA board should have consulted with the tenants before making this decision. The CDA board, to be clear, did not make this decision. We're not talking about surplusing of this and selling it. That's not what the CDA board did. It's my decision that we should probably act in the best interest of the city and sell this building. The CDA board brought it to my attention that the growing costs, and based on a limited city revenues, I decided it's in the city's best interest. There is a hard economic reality that the city cannot afford to keep this building. Some of the tenants have proposed that they will help raise the money to help pay for the growing costs. This is very kind of them, but it is clear that there is no guarantee that such a promise will be realized, and such an unfulfilled promise will only delay the inevitable, that this building will eventually be forced to shut down. Recognize the importance of various social service agencies. I'm committed to working with the social service agencies to try and find another place within Attleboro that they can relocate to and stay together. We can't force them to go to where we would recommend them. However, this is something I am committed to doing, and our economic development director has also been participating in this. A one-stop shop for social services is an invaluable way to offer these services. In closing, the city simply cannot afford to keep this building. I'm not confident that promises of alternative means of paying for increasingly costly repairs will ever materialize to the point where this is revenue neutral for the city. And for that reason, I encourage this honorable body to declare 95 Pine Street surplus so that the city may begin the process of seeing that this becomes affordable housing on the east side.
Thank you. Council Conti, and then
Thank you, Mayor. How old is the roof on the Richardson School?
It's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. It's The CDA board is going to present neither for nor against later this evening, the remainder of the board, there's 4 of us. And the board is going to have a list of the expenses that the building is looking at, things that need to happen in the short term, medium term, and long term. So someone on that board may know that answer. I don't know the answer.
So I was a city councilor when we funded that new roof, and I believe it was less than 5 years ago. Ditto the boiler at a $30,000 expense. So we have a new boiler, we have a new roof. The building, I think, was built in 1910 or even earlier. And there are some things that it certainly is lacking on, like an elevator. But you mentioned that the CDBG did not have the management. What did you say? You said they didn't have the
I never mentioned
skills?
CDBG. I haven't talked about CDBG. Are you talking about CDA, Community Development of Attleboro?
CDA
Okay, yes.
is in charge of the building, correct?
The CDA is a nonprofit formed for other purposes, but it's fallen to CDA to basically act as a management company for this building.
So does that have to continue? Could someone
No.
else become the management of that building?
Yes, that is a possibility.
Okay. You mentioned a profit and loss sheet. You basically talk about income and expenses. Did those income and expenses include the capital improvements that were made to the building?
Please elaborate what you mean.
We were talking about 3 years ago, it was $700 in the red.
That's the operating budget just to maintain, to keep the building open in terms of heating and water bill, wastewater, just the electric. That's what that is. That's not even talking about the, that $7,000, $11,000, $32,000 figure. That doesn't even include the expense, the capital needs. That's separate from that.
So any improvements that have been made to that building are not in those figures?
That's correct. So the deficit is actually much greater than that. That's just for operating expenses.
So in your thinking of declaring this building deaccession, do you have a plan for the tenants in the building?
That's something I mentioned, that it's part of working with the tenants to try and find somewhere new, but somebody else might come in and keep the tenants there, continue the services, operate it differently. That's a possibility. When we sell the building, we don't really tell the new owner what they do with those tenants. That's up to the new owner. We can put a deed restriction on it and preserve the facade, indicate what we would like to see done with the building, but in terms of whether or not the tenants stay, that's not really up to us. That would be up to the new owner.
So my final question, if I may, Mr. President. So now that you've instigated discussion of deaccessioning this building, has that caused a reaction among the tenants of the building, and they are now looking for someplace else to go?
Yeah, the tenants of the building and I are very close. We're very friendly. We have a great relationship. I've relied on them for years as a state representative, referring people to their services. Yes, we've spoken. They're not happy about this, of course. You're going to hear from them that they're not happy about this. And working with them is something that I'm happy to do to help relocate them. But the Office of the Mayor and the CDA board are not real estate agents. We would do that because we believe in the services that are being offered. We recognize the value of those services, but it's something that we would do to help them because we would like to see them continue to operate in one place. So we can only make a recommendation based on what we're able to find as to where somebody might be able to relocate to, like the group as a whole. But to answer your question, though, have other people, other organizations talked about leaving. You hear rumors both ways. You hear rumors that say, yes, that's true, no, that's not true. So it's hard to say.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any, Councilor Holmes?
Thank you. So when did the CDA board vote to raise rent 33%?
That vote, I believe, happened maybe in March or April. It was just a couple months ago. The CDA board, like I said, I'm not here speaking on behalf of the CDA board. They are here to present facts. They're not going to push in any one direction. I'm here to push in one particular direction in my capacity as mayor, which is different than my capacity as president of the CDA board.
I understand. So because the CDA is managing this, are there rent signs for rent signs that are out there to, or that's not, has that ever occurred? I guess?
Well, like I said, you're asking questions that the CDA board should be asking. You're asking questions that you should be asking the CDA board, not the mayor, because the mayor is dual role. I'm the mayor and I'm also the chair of CDA board. I would, in trying to preserve the integrity of the position I'm taking right now, I'd rather not answer in my capacity as the president of the CDA board, but I'll let the CDA board speak in that capacity.
Okay, I have a couple other questions. Have you ever heard of a social service block grant?
Have I ever heard? Yes.
Okay. I'm just concerned because on the front page of the paper about a month ago is 95 Pine Street is going to be sold, and then right below it, on Falmouth Street, we want to have a homeless shelter with wraparound services. And I'm thinking, I'm kind of confused because I just feel like that's what 95 Pine Street is offering right now. So it's concerning.
Well, you're crossing two different issues. One of them is that this shelter with the wraparound services is not a city agency and it's not a city initiative, whereas the Richardson School, 95 Pine Street, is a city building that's being managed by a nonprofit that isn't a management company. And so they're kind of apples to oranges. One thing that has been talked about, though, is if this other facility were to materialize, this other shelter with wraparound services, it's arguable that you could actually put a lot of these services in that place. I'm part of that task force that's looking at this other facility, and there's a lot of overlap between the two in the missions and what they're trying to provide. So if anything, you could argue that getting away from 95 Pine Street and moving towards this other facility is probably probably a better model, and it would certainly be a less costly one to the city.
Okay. I think that concludes my questions. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for the mayor? Vice President Freaker and then Council Colbert.
Actually, I just have a quick clarifying question. Can you, what does wraparound services mean?
Wraparound services is a term used with the nonprofits and social services where you are looking at housing, health care, getting somebody like a job, getting them back on their feet, getting identification. It's just you're wrapping around the entire person, recognizing that to get back on your feet, there's no one particular need. It's sort of a holistic approach. That's what the phrase wraparound services is basically referring to.
Thank you.
Thank you, President Cooper. Thank you, Mayor. So we were generously provided with some of this information, and I know that you're speaking on behalf of your office as opposed to being a member of the CDA Inc. However, if you look at the future expenses page, which I'm sure you're well aware of, there are...
I think the CDA board put this here prematurely, probably shouldn't have.
However, there's a ranking of... All right, I'll get to my question. So it would seem that there are some improvements that need to be made regardless of the piece of paper that's sitting in front of me. And they are ranked kind of similar to capital improvements. So I think, would it be reasonable to say there are some that need to be performed immediately, there are some that are on a 1 or 2 year plan, some are on a 3 to 5 year plan. So would it be reasonable for us to kind of pump the brakes on this so that we can get all of the other, like from your office, I'm just asking. Okay, go ahead.
So let's get through ask a question.
Well, he won't be able to come back to ask.
He can come back before the committee.
Oh, true.
And I can ask him any question that anybody has when I meet with him on Tuesday.
Got it.
And let's let the CDA board, and I've made a commitment to the tenants at 95 Pine Street to keep this public hearing open. We're not there yet, but that's the commitment that I made to them. So, with all of that said, let's keep moving. And if you have a question for the mayor, please ask him. But I just want everybody to know that before we get into the nitty-gritty of the presentation from them, I want to make sure that we ask him the appropriate questions and then let the board come before us and speak. Any other questions or comments? Council?
My understanding, Mayor, is that the 33% increase begins as of July 1. Am I correct on that?
That is, again, that's a question that you're asking. You should be asking the CDA board,
Okay.
not the Office of Mayor. I mean,
Well, I didn't know.
excuse me. I'd appreciate a little respect. That's completely uncalled for, Bill Bowles.
Point of order. We'll let the president manage the president of the company in our
Address the
chambers.
council and ignore the comments if you're getting. I didn't hear
I'm
it,
not
but-
here to answer questions on behalf of CDA Inc. CDA Inc. is the management company, and that's a question that you should ask CDA Inc. That's not a question that I'm here as, the mayor answering, because the mayor doesn't deal with that level of detail. CDA Inc. does. So, like I said, I'm trying to keep my roles separate and clear, because CDA Inc. has a different message when they come up here from the message that I'm presenting, and I'm trying to highlight that by keeping these roles defined.
I will refrain from my next question and ask that of CDA.
Very good, thank you.
Any other questions for the mayor?
Is that okay?
Council Holmes?
Thank you. So, it kind of sounds like the way that the CDA, I know that you're not speaking about that, but the way that they became the management, it just kind of happened. Like, this has just evolved over the years, and now we've come to a point where we're really trying, as a city, saying we can't manage to maintain this. Is that accurate?
What
or-
CDA presented to the Office of Mayor is that their ability to meet the revenues of the building, with using existing revenues, their ability to meet expenses is insufficient. Based on what they presented to me, it's my opinion that it's in the best interest of the city to sell the building, to surplus it and sell the building. The reason for that is because the expenses are very costly, they're growing, and the expenses are something that if we were to fund and pay for out of free cash or reserve for transfer, are going to take away from other city departments. I don't believe that we should be in the business of subsidizing nonprofit agencies. It's just my personal opinion.
Thank you.
So as the position of the city, what is the contract between the city of Attleboro, your office, and CDA?
CDA has an agreement with the city, the city, and it's not with my office, it's with the city, and so it's basically just an agreement that they manage the building, and sometimes expenses fall on the city when the board, and this has happened in the past, when the revenues are inadequate to meet those expenses, but that's something that, like I said, it's not a sustainable model.
Can I follow up?
Yes.
So do we have a lease agreement with CDA?
I believe we do, and that
do you know how much
predates.
the lease is for them?
No, I don't know off the top of my head, but that predates my time here as mayor.
Okay. Could you find out what the lease agreement is for us? And when you can come back and you can give us that, provide us with that information. And I would also, or perhaps through the chair, however it can be done, is that I would love to see a list of the financial responsibilities that have fallen on the city with regards to this building.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other, Council Conti?
Mayor, it occurs to me that we're missing some vital information. Maybe we could get that information from the new economic development director of what we think that building is worth and what it might sell for, together with what it's currently assessed for.
It's assessed at 1.6 million. That was in the newspaper.
And so what do you think you're gonna get if you sell it?
Not 1.6 million. I don't know what we would get for it. We'd have to put out an RFP and see what developers come in to offer as a bid. We don't know.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any other questions for the mayor? Thank you, Mayor. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor? Is there anyone else here to speak in favor? Anyone to speak in opposition? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition? Anyone here to speak neither for, go ahead.
Interesting night. Roxanne Houghton, 13 Eisenhower Street, and I am adamantly opposed to selling that building until and unless another home is found for the entities in that building. I've been in that building, and I know the people that they help. I know what they do there, and this is a very emotional subject, but we had an earlier public hearing about we don't want people that buy $700,000 houses to have to pay any more money Well, this is the other end of the spectrum, the people that have no money. And we have a responsibility to them too. You know, they live in Attleboro just like everybody else. I'm one of those people. I'm not saying that I'm any different. And I think that that was kind of a callous remark that was made tonight about not subsidizing these nonprofits. I'd rather subsidize them than many other things that we do. Thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak in opposition?
Yes, Bill Bowles, 65 Norgate Road in Attleboro. Again, I have some other comments, but maybe just lead out by saying what I am recommending that the council do is to not put that building out to bid until you have a detailed plan from the administration as to how each of the nonprofits that are serving the city, where they're going to be located, and at similar costs. And I think it's important if they, it's one thing to say we'll work with them, but that doesn't give the people that are performing services for our city any assurance that they're going to be able to continue to operate. So I would like to see, before I would vote on it, would respectfully ask that you request and not vote until you have a detailed plan. I think the mayor said that they were important functions that serve functions like the unemployment office, or a WIC, or the career services, or the fuel assistance program. These are managed by nonprofits, but make no mistake, those nonprofits are performing services for our city. We talk about the earlier public hearing talked about a whole different group of people buying homes for the first time at a cost that might affect them. But this is the other end of the spectrum. These are people that we rely on. One of those social service agencies that's in there that I'm quite familiar with for other reasons is the career services. And those are people that, first of all, the career services gets a lot of federal dollars to supply support services to our community. They do things like helping people with their resumes so that they can gain employment. They do training for individuals in, like, for example, converting to learning Microsoft Office and a whole host of other things. They even send them to training. So they perform a lot of the services. And each one of the programs that are in there performs important services. And to say that it's not our responsibility to subsidize them, why would we take one group of citizens that are relying on services, why would we take that one group and say, we won't subsidize that group of services, but we certainly subsidize and provide great amounts of funding to meet other needs of the city. We build fire stations for firefighters and folks, and police stations and I'll use the word subsidize, but to provide the services that are going to meet all of the citizens' needs. And we build recreational facilities. But why are we assuming that this one group of people that are impacted by what goes on at 95 Pine Street, why are we assuming that that group has to be represented, has to be totally unsubsidized? I don't understand why it's not acceptable that there be some cost of the city to provide for those citizens. So I'm requesting that you require a detailed plan to know what's going to happen to those citizens. I don't think any of us wants to find the WIC program having to move to Taunton or Fall River because we couldn't provide a home for them here. Or the career services, somebody who in Attleboro who's searching for a job has to go 20 miles away. But I think this is a situation where you 11 people have the ability to determine their destiny. And I would ask you to do it.
Thank you. Council Conti.
Representative Bowles, you've been exposed to more government than probably all 11 of us combined. What is the possibility that we might find some help from the state in maintaining a Attleboro Human Services Administration building?
One thing that I think you briefly, somebody mentioned it to the mayor, which I think feeds into that, is the city gets CDBG grant funds, and it's for a number of purposes, what they can be used for. But one of them is to aid low-income individuals. And I would think that it would be perfectly reasonable for some portion of the CDBG grant funds to go into helping to provide a place for these nonprofits because it's tied to helping our residents.
But
With
Bill,
regard to the state,
right.
I suppose there might be some grants that could be requested, but quite frankly, if the state was trying to make that kind of a decision on what to do, and they wanted to see how much skin in the game Attleboro had, and we said, well, we don't believe that the city should put any money into this because it's not our job to subsidize them, I think it would be tough to get a grant.
So can I interpret that statement to say that if the city were to invest in an Attleboro Human Services Administration building, that we may have state aid to help us do that?
I think you certainly would make a stronger case if you put some in and you ask your legislative delegation that we're having some difficulty here, and if we could apply for a grant, that usually the state wants to see some contribution in the city. In all the years I've served on this board, there's a lot of 50-50 grant matches and sometimes 70-30. But I think we need to try, and I think just cavalierly saying it's not our job to subsidize, and if the tenants can't pay the rent to accomplish this zero-sum gain there, then they're going to have to leave. And I think the thing that might be missed by the decision to want to put this out is those people that work at 95 Pine Street, they actually provide a contribution that helps our citizens survive. And if we believe that, why are we not willing to make some type of an investment to be part of that?
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Bowles? Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak in opposition? Anyone else here to speak in opposition? Anyone here to speak neither for nor against?
Good evening, members of the Municipal Council. Dorothy Brissett, CD Director for the city, but this evening I'm before you as the treasurer of the Community Development of Attleboro, Inc. So not as my capacity as CD Director, but treasurer of the Community Development of Attleboro, Inc. Would you go ahead?
Hi, my name is Laura Gignac. I am also here in the capacity of CDA Inc. I am a board member. I'm not here in my capacity of city treasurer.
Good evening, Council President, members. Gary Arasian. I'm also a board member of CDA Inc., and I am not here tonight as the Director of the Department of Planning and Development for the City of Attleboro.
So this evening I have a presentation for you folks. This is merely information purposes. We did, as a board, discuss some of the expenses and financial difficulties that we've been faced with as part of our management of 95 Pine Street. You all have the pass-out presentation is up here for the public's viewing. I know there's a lot of questions, and I hope I have, or we have, all of your answers. Again, I'm going to apologize in advance for my lack of technical intelligence here. So CDA Inc., and we're already started. CDA Inc. is a 501c3. It has the ability to accept charitable donations on behalf of the city to promote community events. Some of the events that we have promoted over the years include the Expo of Senses, the Winter Fest, the Halloween party over at the Rec Center, the Small Repairs Program that is managed through the Council on Aging. Also, by default, and from the inception, I believe, of the board, we are also the managers of 95 Pine Street. And some of the recent renovations that we've done over at 95 Pine Street include some carpeting and painting to 4 rooms up on the 2nd floor, new flooring to the 1st floor, an additional sub-panel on the 2nd floor to allow for upgraded electrical systems so that we're able to rent out some of the rooms up on the 2nd floor. Some of those rooms didn't have the proper outlets needed to support Wi-Fi or the enough electrical current to support computers, so on and so forth. As you all know, it's an old school. The electrical system is severely out of date. So there was a sub-panel that was updated, or I'm sorry, that was installed. We did some new exterior doors, newly renovated bathroom on the 2nd floor, and then some ongoing renovations to the basement. These are just some examples. These are the new doors that we did in the front of the building. Just some examples of the flooring that was recently done within the last 5 years. Even though there has been some capital improvements done within the building, we have faced some severe financial difficulties within the last 12 months. Our capital maintenance expenses have been in some substantial rise. Our utility costs have increased, and our staff costs have increased as well. Just to give you an example, our annual expenses from May of 2018 through May of 2019 were about $73,000. The amount of revenue that we received in that period of time was only $59,000. Those expenses do not include our capital maintenance expenses. Just to give you folks an idea, from 2016, to 17, our capital maintenance expenses were only about $7,200. From 17 to 18, they were just over $11,000. From 18 to 19, they were $32,000. We faced a lot of dilapidated issues, a lot of leaky pipes, sewer pipes. We're currently under order of the fire department to switch out our master box. If there was ever, God forbid, a fire over at 95 Pine Street, the fire department would not receive the fire call because the box itself was not working. The lift, currently the chair lift there is not sufficient. That's about a $70,000 capital improvement. Currently underway, as I mentioned, the firebox replacement. That's a $7,500 job. That was actually just completed and inspected by the fire department yesterday. So that bill's coming in the mail board. We also have a leaky sewer pipe that needs to be removed. That pipe runs from the basement all the way up into the second floor. That's currently, there's currently gas and sewer leak dripping in between the walls. That pipe needs to be removed. That's considered a health and safety violation. That's a $1,500 emergency repair that needs to be done right away. So that there alone are two expenses, unforeseeable costs that we were not expecting. These are just some pictures. The board took it upon themselves to hire a rehab consultant used through the Community Development Block Grants Housing Rehabilitation Program. We hired the rehab consultant to go out and do just an overall walkthrough of the building, give us an idea. What are we looking at here? What are the expenses that we're looking at? What's the emergency need? What can wait a year? Coming to this decision to approach the mayor that this board doesn't have the financial capacity to continue managing this building so that we can continue to have this one-stop social service component in the city was difficult for us. We talked about this over multiple months. As you can see, over a 12-month window, there was a 200% increase in our capital expenses. All of the reserves that this board had in funds completely exhausted in 12 months. That's a substantial expense for us. We hired this rehab consultant. He walked through the building. These are some of the pictures that he took. We did replace, as Mr. Conti mentioned, the boiler might have been replaced. Piping wasn't replaced. These pictures here are pipes that connect to the boiler. This is a $6,000 replace that needs to be done within the next year. There's deterioration on the flat roof. There's a collapsed ceiling in the basement. Just a section of it, excuse me, I'm sorry. There are sections of the basement ceiling that are collapsing and that are falling into the sprinkler system that could break the sprinkler system at any given time. These aren't things that should be, these are things that need to be addressed immediately. These items, as you can see on your list, these are all, the majority of the items need to be handled, thank you very much. The majority of the items really should be addressed within the next year. The total cost of expenses, and these are just expenses that we know of. As you may know, when you start walking through an old building, when you start opening up an old building, you find more than just what meets the eye. These expenses exceed $250,000. These are funds that at this time, this board simply does not have to invest back into this building. So the decision for us to come to the mayor, to come to council, to talk about, what's our next step as a board, didn't come to us lightly. We understand the implications if this building gets sold. We're not here to speak in favor of selling this building. We're merely here to say, we're working on a deficit at this point. We don't have the financial capacity as a board to continue to manage this building. Thank you.
Council Conti?
I have several questions, if I may, Mr. President.
Sir.
Would you please research when the roof was replaced? I believe it's within the last 5 years. The boiler.
It's actually been just over 10 years. Yeah. Excuse me.
Fast.
It did, yeah. I've been with the city 6 years, and it was done prior to me coming on.
But the boiler was replaced while you were here, right?
The boiler was not replaced while I was here, and it was only partially replaced. So the boiler should be assessed as well. It was actually recommended by the rehab consultant that an engineer be hired and that the entire building be reassessed, so that when we're redoing the heating system and the electrical, that the heating is properly zoned. If we were to keep the building, that the heating is properly zoned, and that the building be properly, efficiently restructured.
So the boiler that's in there now heats the building?
Correct. Not efficiently and not well.
Well, it's an old building.
Yes.
You mentioned that staff costs were increasing.
Correct.
If we were to sell the building, would there be a reduction in your staff?
There would have to be, yes.
So give me Give me what that
So
implications are.
previously, the board had a part-time person that also worked for the city. The individual would be available on call. He would open and close the building. If the alarm system would go off, that person would address the calls to the alarm system. It was determined that it was a conflict of interest, and also the person actually asked to retire from his position, part-time position, as our maintenance man. So when we were in search of somebody else, we did bring that individual on initially part-time.
The new person.
The new person on part-time. He quickly realized that it was a full-time job to manage that building. He was constantly being called. There were issues that required him to be there regularly, and we felt that it was beneficial to have him there regularly. So we negotiated, what was suitable for a salary for him. And actually, to be perfectly honest, what he's getting paid and for the amount of hours that he's actually there is not sufficient enough.
How many square feet are in the building?
I think what we're renting out is about 1,100, just 11,000 square feet.
And how big is the building?
It's roughly, I'm going to say about half an acre.
So the building is 1/4 utilized?
No, half an acre, it's about half.
Well, half an acre, okay, so it's about 50% utilized?
Just about. There are 4 rooms on the second floor that are not rented.
On the CDA capital maintenance costs are on the rise slide. I think it's back several slides. You say 2016-17 cost $7,212, that slide?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
How did a dollar get on your list? In other words, what's inside that number?
I'm sorry, one more time, please?
What's inside that number?
What's
All the
inside?
expenses that
Just
we
the
incurred.
expenses, calling the plumber for a leaky pipe, any electrical issues, if we had an issue with the alarm system and we had to call the alarm company to come out and address it.
So in 2016, what was your total revenue income?
I would have to look that up.
Okay, I would like that
Sure.
number if I may.
Yeah?
Because you're operating now at a 50% vacancy. There could be, you said 4 rooms on the second floor? I guess the question,
We're
let me put
probably
it in
on
the form of a question, because this is what I'm supposed to do, in the form of a question. How many more service agencies could go into that building?
Well, it depends, all the service agencies, if I may, don't have the equal amount of square footage. So we're
Right.
very accommodating, and we try to accommodate someone needs 500 square feet, 1 room, 2 rooms. We try to make the lease process as flexible as possible. So you can't really say, Counselor, that it would be 1 agency per room, but the fact of the matter is, I know your thought process is, well, you've got vacant space, if there's room for revenue, absolutely. One of the considerations we made, though, along with that, occupying that floor space, along with it comes expense again. So whether we're operating at 50% with these expenses, if you double the occupancy, there's gonna be a commensurate amount of expense with that as well. Did we actually extrapolate that? No, we didn't, and here's one of the reasons why. We're very, very sensitive to the occupants and the tenants of that building. And what often we do is we don't just have a flat fee of what we think the square footage cost should be. We actually negotiate and back into a price to help best fit the tenant's pocket. So you might say, shame on you for doing that, but I think you're probably gonna say, we hear why you do that. Everyone can't afford that same base fee. So we work with the tenants. We try to understand what they can afford. There have been times they've asked, can we come in for free? We've actually contemplated that, but we sometimes then say it's not fair to another entity. So we'll come up with a lease agreement or a fee that is fair to that entity. So for that reason, we can't then necessarily extrapolate that if we take the balance of that floor space and multiply it by a certain dollar amount, that we're guaranteed a certain revenue stream that could exceed, or the revenue stream would exceed the expenses. So there's always going to be an increase in the expense, but it's hard to forecast the revenue stream given the nature of the agencies their inability to pay high, and that's why they are there, and that's why we allow a very lower level, a lower base lease agreement, because we try to work with them to accommodate their pocketbook.
So as a follow-up question, what's the possibility that we could find someone that would need 11,000 square feet that would be able to afford a very high rent and subsidize the rest of the people in the building?
Sure, good question again. And all I say again is, one of the questions Councilor Holmes asked, why don't we put a for rent sign up? The reason why we haven't put a for rent sign up is this. Once again, we're very sensitive to the tenants who occupy that. And what we don't want to do is necessarily just advertise we have floor space, and then every time a tenant might come forward and we think that it might not be a good fit between the new tenant and the sensitivity of the services that are provided.
Good
So
answer.
for that reason, what we've tried to maximize to the abilities we can, all of us, is by word of mouth.
Yeah.
It takes time. It takes a lot of hand-holding. It takes a lot of telephone calls. And I will tell you, every so often, someone has approached the board. They're like, fantastic. But again, it's the sensitive services, and we recognize that. So we could easily, perhaps, I shouldn't say easily, let me take that back. We can more likely attract the tenant that could take that space. And one of the things I was going to suggest to the council, maybe we could do a site visit so you can actually see the spaces, that maybe one of the social services are, we can go a couple of times when they're actually there, see how they act, conduct their business, so you can see how they're working, go later at night, so you can get into the forensics of what we're talking about, the slides that Dorothy showed. So I think that's a good, well, my humble opinion, I think that's a good idea. We should all go collectively. But to get back to your question is, we could probably get somebody that could occupy. But the question is that then a good fit? If we're only going to look at the economics of it, it probably is a good fit, but does it complement, or is there any discordance with the services that the tenants provide? So we're always looking at it perhaps too much with a jaundiced eye to make sure who we want to bring in as a tenant complements, or at least can coexist with the tenants. And for that reason, we don't put a for sale sign on. And because of that, Councilor Conti, it's a little more difficult to rent it. We don't put anything in the newspaper. So we try to do that by word of mouth.
I don't mind, I'm sorry.
We've probably tried other techniques. I mean, nothing really comes to mind right now, so I don't want to just throw something out there, but it's generally word of mouth. And if the tenants want to offer to bring someone and ask us, they want to expand, or they have perhaps a colleague organization, hey, CDA Board of Directors, and that's happened, would you consider having a sister group come in? But we've considered that as well.
So Dorothy, you're well-versed in the HUD guidelines. You
Yes.
live in those standards and regulations every day.
Nightmares about them.
Nightmares too, I'm sure. Trust me, I know your world. You've looked at the HUD program and the CDBG operation, and you've looked to see whether or not there's additional revenues that might be slid over into the Richardson School, and you found none.
Well, CDBG funds can't be used with CDA Inc. as the management company, for lack of better terms, because there's a conflict of interest there. The 3 board members that sit on CDA Inc. are also the committee that reviews the applications and makes recommendations to council for the CDBG budget. So there's a conflict there. So CDBG funds cannot be used for any renovations. CDBG funds can also cannot be used for general maintenance renovations on a municipal building. So there's no CDBG funds available for general maintenance, and no CDBG funds available because of the conflict of interest between the board members and the board that reviews the applications and makes the recommendations for the CDBG budget. As far as whether or not there are other sources of funding that may be available, in my experience, I don't know of any state funding or federal money that is available for the general maintenance of a municipal building. we could certainly look into it a little bit further, but I've been in this federal world for about 18, almost 19 years now, and I don't know of any. I certainly am open to speaking to any of the social service agencies that may have other avenues, or anybody else that may have other avenues that we could explore. But based on my experience and my knowledge, I don't believe there are any other sources of funds that are available for the general maintenance of a municipal building.
I like the way you read my mind.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Council Dolan.
So when you say general maintenance, does this entire list qualify as general maintenance? Like when I think of general maintenance, I think of like monthly, cleaning
Yeah.
or whatever. But like when we're talking about a boiler, a heating system.
Yeah, that's
any-
not general maintenance. That's like a capital investment.
Right, so if we went down this list of the chairlift, the boiler, the electrical, the windows, that's one time, so that's not general maintenance, right? So are there funds anywhere that would be available for these type of?
Yeah, I don't know of any. We could certainly look into it a little bit further, but off the top of my head, I do not know of any.
And dare I correct you, please don't take, I wouldn't say that those are.
That's your job.
Well, it's not my job, it's just, point of clarification. I don't think it's a one-time investment.
I agree. But it's not general maintenance.
It's a non-recurring, right?
Right.
So maybe every 10 years or so, but I wouldn't classify it or categorize it as a one-time payment.
Agree.
Like that. Over time, just like anything else, it's gonna be new standards and electrical standards, fire standards. 5 years from now, it's gonna require a replacement of the system we just put in today.
Right.
So I would probably categorize as non-recurring, but it's still at some point, it's never gonna be a final.
Yeah.
Agree,
Okay, in that
and I
regard.
stand corrected,
And
but-
typically, there isn't much funding available when it comes to municipal-owned properties.
Right, I was just trying to clarify if there was a separation when you're talking general maintenance, you're like, I know there's no money for general maintenance.
Yeah.
So I wanted to know if some of these larger items were out of the general maintenance category, that maybe we could get something.
Not that I'm aware of.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council Holmes.
Thank you. So if the CDA decided to dissolve, the block grant money could potentially be used for the chairlift in that building?
If the,
No, that's, no. What Dorothy said is that we as board members, so there's no need to dissolve CDA Inc. Okay, it's how you populate it. So I don't think
So
she
if
mentioned.
Dorothy was not a member of it, then the city
No.
could potentially,
Well, that's not true either, because Dorothy technically works for me in the Department of Planning and Development, so we are all equal. I'm just a board member, and of course, Laura, as an elected official, is a higher pay grade than us, but on this board, we all serve as equal members of a board of equal authority and of equal say, and we have debates. So, not to speak for Dorothy, she did not say that if we were to dissolve that, she just said that because it is populated by staff, and because it was, as best as my institutional memory can go back to, it even predates me, so it's a very long time, that it was populated. It was actually staffed for a while. CDA Inc. not only had a board of directors, if we go back to circa 1979 or 1980, it not only had a board, it also had a staff. In fact, some councils might recall, CDA Inc. actually administered the block grant. And it wasn't until 2002 when then city solicitor and the then mayor said enough of this, and they brought the staff, the administration or the staff of the block grant, CDBG, into the city, put it with the Department of Planning and Development, but still kept CDA Inc. What role should CDA Inc. play if it's not going to administer the block grant? Well, one of the other roles it played was it managed the building. It did some of these other items in terms of grant management. So the primary mission of CDA Inc. was to administer the block grant. And the then city solicitor said you can't do it that way. And the council, I know Councilor Jackson was on the council at the time, and others, took that responsibility, brought it into the city. Where's the logical place to put it? They put it with the Department of Planning, actually at the time it was Planning and Land Use. We changed the Department of Planning and Development and still kept CDA Inc. because it had it had a usefulness, if you may. And one of those usefulness was to manage the building.
So my question is that are we not able to access money because of the board members? Is that what you're saying? That, because the chairlift, that is something that has to do with having a
So if the,
accessibility to a building. And that is how the money is used, is to
yeah,
help.
so if the building was not managed by CDA Inc. and it was managed by a nonprofit with a long-term lease agreement with the city, then that nonprofit could apply for CDBG money for the replacement of that chairlift, correct?
Okay, and then have you ever heard of a social, thank you, have you ever heard of a social service block grant? Social services block grant?
I have not heard of that.
Okay. So I think that there are some opportunities that I just don't want our city to lose out on.
Okay, sure, I can look
concludes
into
my
that a little bit
comments.
further.
Thank you.
Council Waterman.
I would appreciate it, and maybe people watching this on television would appreciate knowing what the organizations and the agencies are. I have a follow-up question there right now. If you could share that with me, please.
Located in the building?
Yes, please.
So there are various agencies in the building. There are agencies that serve, there's the WIC, there's the Career Center, there's the Attleboro Interfaith Collaborative Services, there's St. Vincent de Paul, there's also self-help, there is the Bristol County, the Career Center, Bristol County Career Center. There's also and I'm going to apologize for this because I know I have this wrong. The Mayor's Office of Reentry is now a different name, and I get it wrong every time because it's new and it's long. It's the Reentry Program. And there's also Pave Your Path. There are 6 social service agencies in total.
Is there not also a food bank?
Yes, that's self-help.
That is under self-help?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so that's self-help. Is the, so I asked this to the mayor, but I guess I should have asked it to you, and I thank you for everything you're doing. You're really working hard, I can
Thank
tell. Am I correct in understanding that July 1st is when the increase in rent takes effect?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Is there any understanding of how long that might be for?
The lease agreements are for 1 year.
1 year?
Correct.
Could we possibly interpret that as a I'm not really expecting anybody to answer this.
Sure.
But I'm wondering if we could possibly interpret that as a time period where a moratorium could take place to try to fix this, one way or the other.
Well,
So
again,
I'm going to
let's
save you some.
understand
I'm going to save you the question, Gary, and
I'm out of order, right?
Not necessarily, except that probably 45 minutes ago I said we were keeping this public hearing open so that we could all sort of work toward a plan on sort of what is the best course of action for everyone.
Right.
And so my intent is to keep this public hearing open for that. So to sort of put them on the spot for that question, this may not be the time for that, but
That's
the
fine.
time's coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Council Holmes.
Thank you. I had one other question now, I hope I didn't lose it. Can any social service agency apply for a block grant to help with rent?
They can. There are limits on the amount of rent that we're able to pay. Also, the social service agency needs to prove that more than 51% of the people that they're serving are below the 80% of median income. And they need to provide that beneficiary information as part of their national objective.
Okay, thank you.
So just like any social service agency goes through the application process. So yeah,
Right.
you could apply, and there's a whole litmus test that you go through, HUD criteria, and if you qualify, you qualify.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Council Cobus?
So my questions were primarily answered already. They were regarding CDBG money, potential other grant money that may be available, and who was looking into that. So it sounds like all of that's been covered. But one of the things I'd like to encourage you to do in preparation for coming back is to provide more of that information, more of sort of alternative plans and sort of thinking outside the box as far as what alternatives we might have to selling the building. Whether it's long-term leases or the city selling it to the CDA for, or anything along those lines. I obviously don't want to get into another Finberg Field
Yeah, I don't-
situation, but any potential alternatives would be great to hear.
I mean, I think as the capacity of the board, we can certainly look into other alternatives and finding funds to maybe do the renovation work for the building, but as far as determining what the faith of the building
Right,
is
that's-
ultimately, that's not our capacity.
Just so that we can look at all the options.
Sure,
that would be
absolutely,
great. Thank
sure.
Councilor Reynolds and then Vice President Burkett.
When you just said looking at other options to, so are you talking about this $250,000?
Correct.
Other options to pay that?
Correct.
For a municipal building?
And it wouldn't be all in one chunk, so we'd probably do that as the expense comes up. So some of those, Council Reynolds projected out to the third or fourth year. So what we would do is we would start trying to address the items that are right now, and then within the first year.
But it would still be like any other municipal building. We are funding it.
Yeah.
That's what the bottom line is. And then and so unfortunately, right now, we're not also getting the rent that even comes close to paying the average upkeep, like electrical,
our
the
monthly
monthly
bills.
bills.
Right.
And this is,
Right now,
as we know, these always get more every year. I mean,
Right.
we're having the issues with the other municipal buildings. So I'm just asking, there isn't anything that would pay for the municipal upkeep of a building other than the municipality, correct? In some way or form, whether it's a bonding or something like that. Nobody's going to give us the money.
Well, I think that's what Dorothy said earlier, is, we're not aware of any government agency that's just giving a grant to the municipality for your just general maintenance.
Thank you.
Perhaps through the president to the chair, in response to Gary's suggestion, is it possible for us to schedule, while the public hearing is open, is it possible for us to schedule a tour of the building and our ability to, so if we could do that at some point before then, that would be.
Well, it isn't going to happen at the end of this meeting, but the chair can work
Yeah.
with CDA Inc. and the tenants.
I
to
understand
figure
that.
out.
I understand that. I think that would be appropriate for us. Number one, I know that many of the representatives are here, but I think it would be beneficial, or I would like to see what is actually happening over there to.
Sure.
Well, yeah, and I think one of the things would be is really to have the visit. I'll arrange that with these people here who are managing the building, and we'll go from there.
Sure, okay.
The
Great.
people that can be there, and those that can't.
You can FaceTime them in.
You can.
We could do one after hours, I mean, we could do one during the day, and if need be, nothing says we have to do it once, we can do it another time. After hours, on Tuesday night, when, at least you don't have a council meeting, not to say everyone's free on every night, but where we can get the most councilors after hours and still go through, we'll have the lights on, and we could do that too, we could do more than one.
We'll pick a day that works for you.
Well, no, we'll turn the lights off to save some
Yes,
lights.
electricity, that's what I was thinking too.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh,
Oh.
Councilor
Is it safe to say that with this rent increase, that provided all things stay the same, and obviously they don't, but that would cover the operating expenses? I understand it's been increasing year over year, but.
Yeah, so the rent increase is merely just to cover the operating expenses. It
Not the additional
doesn't even come
250.
close to touching the capital improvements.
Got it. But just generally speaking, that would cover.
Right now, we're working in a deficit for our operating expenses.
And what's the response been to that increase as far
We've
as?
gotten 2 out of 6 lease agreements back.
What do you mean back?
Signed, yes. That two agencies have signed on for the next fiscal year.
Have any agencies said that they wouldn't be able to afford it? And
We haven't heard.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak neither for nor against?
This is not going to work. Good evening. My name is Lisa Nelson. I live at 4 Williamsburg Lane in Attleboro. I just want to answer a couple of your questions, Councilor Conti, before I start our little presentation. One is the roof was replaced in 2010. It cost $60,000. The city paid $30,000, and the CDBG grant paid the other $30,000. I checked with the city auditor to see what kinds of improvements had been made to the building. The second question that was out there was the licensing agreement between the city and CDA. The CDA pays the city $1. So they have a 3-year licensing agreement. It expires in September of 2020. And then one other one. There's been some comments back and forth about whose responsibility the people that these agencies serve are. And basically, it's our responsibility. And if you look at the revised city ordinances of the city of Attleboro, under ordinance, it's under the administration, 2-1.6, it calls for a human services coordinator, which we don't have. But this human services coordinator, under the supervision and control of the mayor, shall identify community needs in the area of human services and promote community capacity to fill these needs, monitor existing services, facilitate communication among human service providers, and strengthen the network of programs available to the community. It should initiate human services planning, identify funding sources, apply for appropriate grants, and administer grant-funded activities for the city of Attleboro. So right now, these people do that, so that the city doesn't have to. So, I appreciate the opportunity to be here to speak neither for nor against this proposal, but to speak about an alternative that I hope you will all consider. But first, I think it's important for you all to know what's at stake. For the better part of a century, Richardson School has been a cornerstone of the east side of Attleboro. As an elementary school, the children in the neighborhoods of Pine Street, Pearl Street, School Street, East Street, and many more walked to and from school every day. For the past 30 years, the people living on those same streets have walked to Richardson School seeking assistance that allows them to meet the basic needs of their families, including rental assistance, food, heat, clothing, employment, housing, pre- and postnatal care for mothers and children under age 5. We've been told that you would prefer that we do not bring the representatives from these agencies to the podium to tell you all the important things that they do for our residents, because you already know what they do. And so we'll honor that request. But I would like those here in the audience who provide these critical services to stand and be recognized. Each of you has a packet that contains a description of the eight agencies located at 95 Pine Street, along with the number of people they help, the type of help they provide, and the monetary value of those services. As you can see, the numbers are astounding. In aggregate, these 8 agencies help over 14,626 individuals per year. They oversee the distribution of 25,588 meals, and they provide services that are valued at $2,473,000. And the information to that effect is in your packet. 95 Pine Street is a hub of activity despite its appearance. Co-locating in the same building provides a continuum of care for our residents that addresses their needs through the collaboration of the agencies located there. And at this time, I'd like to ask Gail Mocklin from Pave Your Path and Irene Frechette from St. Vincent de Paul. They have 2 quick stories to tell you that sort of exemplify what we were just talking about.
I'm Gail Mocklin. I'm a tenant at 95 Pine Street. I'm the co-founder of Pave Your Path. And it's already been shared how important it is for us to be co-located, but we wanted to share a little bit, just one quick little story. We had a participant come in a couple of weeks ago, and they went to Homes with Hearts and worked with a caseworker because they were working out some housing issues. And then they walked him down to my office down the hall and introduced him, told me a little bit about him, gave him the dignity of a warm handoff. He didn't have to walk in and be a stranger and feel uncomfortable. He was handed off to me where I was able to sit with him at my desk, find out what is the issue, why do you need housing? Why is there such a deficit with finances? He is fallen on really hard times, had a very tragic story like many people do, and he had 2 bills that needed to be paid. He works as a driver, or wanted to be working as a driver again, and he had an excise tax bill, and he had a phone bill. His phone was shut off. He needed GPS, and he needed a valid license to get a job. So he showed me that situation. He felt defeated. He didn't know what to do. My organization doesn't give people money, so I walked him next door to Irene and said, can you help him with these? It was $200 or $204 to get this person who's not working to be able to get a job. St. Vincent de Paul covered the cost for that, walked him back to my office. I sat down with him. I built a resume in a half an hour for him. I showed him how to apply for jobs online. I let him use a computer to make sure his license was not suspended from that excise tax. And then we started applying for jobs. And then we set an appointment for him to come back next week to further his life. Because that's what we can do when we work together. We can give people dignity, we can give them services, we can give them help. We don't all do the same things. We all do different things. Just ask you to imagine for 1 second if this guy walked into Homes with Hearts and then was told, I know you don't have a car, but can you maybe figure out, or a bus fare, figure out how to get 3 miles down the street to meet this person that you don't even know how she's gonna help you? It's not gonna happen. It's gonna stop. People need to be able to be in a location where they can get all their services, and they need to be able to walk there or take a bus. So that's a little bit about what we do and why it's important. Thank you.
So, Irene Frechette, I represent St. Vincent de Paul Society. Just a quick overview. During the last administration, 95 Pine Street also came up for affordable housing. The tenants came to the city council at that point and pled their case, and for some magic reason, we stayed there. After that, we were still cognizant of the fact that that building could be sold at any time. So we actively engaged in a feasibility study, and we looked at buildings around the whole city of Attleboro so that we could all stay together. We were calling it self-sufficiency collaborative. The only thing we found that could possibly hold us and provide space for rent-paying tenants was 34 Forest Street. Well, in the long run, 34 Forest Street, the building one of Texas Instruments, that turned out to be a sick building, so that didn't work. So just a little history there for those of you who might be new. And for the point of transparency also, St. Vincent de Paul runs a clothing center in the basement of 95 Pine Street. We pay no rent. We receive goods, they're all given to us. We give them for free. It's a win-win for everybody. It's a zero profit, zero cost. We're in the basement, and we also are the subject of the leaky pipes that Dorothy was showing you, because very often they'll burst and go all over everything. So that's just a little thing. The new reentry office, we live on grants for direct services. We talked with the mayor at the beginning about having a reentry office. He had agreed that we could stay there 1 year without rent, so this is for full transparency, so that we could take the time to write grants that would cover the administrative costs. So the idea would be that within 1 year, we would come up with the money to pay the rent, as everybody else in the building does. So I didn't want you to think that we're not doing it. But at any rate, so we write grants. We don't have any federal funds that come to us. Quick story, like just to show you how collaboration works. A young woman walked in the other day. She needed help to get her birth certificate from a city in Austin, Texas. So I was able to, with St. Vincent de Paul Direct Services, we were able to sign on to the computer, pay it with our credit card, get her birth certificate would be within 2 days. She needed this in order to be able to get her ID so that she could get the first job that she's ever had. This young woman is 25 years old, suffered great disparity. It's going to be her first job. So she said, I also need some black pants. I was able to go downstairs to our clothing center, and while we were walking, I noticed her shoes were flopping, and in fact, I hoped to bring a pair to you tonight to prove it, but they had already thrown them away. Her shoes were flopping. We got her 2 pair of sneakers, we got her 3 pairs of pants and some tops, and she's ready to go to work. And we gave her a 10-ride bus pass so that she could get to work. That's the way collaboration works, and that's the way we work in that building. It's unbelievable. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Irene, just one.
Laura, when did the Office of Reentry open?
It just opened in March.
In March. So you have a year, there was an agreement to be there for a year.
Yes.
So that you could
Yes, we have
get
to
yourself
apply
squared
for
away.
grants because we don't have grants that cover that.
Thank you.
So as you previously heard from representatives of the CDA, Richardson School needs work. It has a laundry list of deferred maintenance that needs to be addressed, and the current rents by the tenants won't cover the cost to cure those deficiencies. The CDA has made the determination that they cannot carry the burden any longer and have asked this honorable body to dispose of the building. They have also offered to help relocate the agencies. Although appreciative of the offer of relocation, there is a major problem. Who will take them in? What landlord would welcome 6 social service agencies that pay below market rent and 2 that pay no rent at all because they are totally run by volunteers? The tenants have an interest in preserving the 30-year legacy of housing social services at 95 Pine Street because the building still has value to the city, and we would like the opportunity to make that happen. So now I'd like to introduce Wendy Foster, who's the co-partner of Pave Your Path, to explain how that might be possible.
My name is Wendy Foster. I'm a resident of Attleboro. 32 years I live at 48 Sandalwood Drive. So a lot of what I am going to address is actually stuff that you guys already asked about and that's already been raised by others. But I'd like to reframe the finances a little bit differently and talk about what the current recurring costs are, and then talk about what the deferred maintenance picture looks like. So yes, we totally understand that currently the current revenue does not cover the operating costs of the program. It runs at about $13,500 deficit annually, projected loss annually. And even with a 33% increase in rents that are anticipated to go into effect in July, the net gain is only going to be about $9,200 a year. So clearly not going to cover the vast array of deferred maintenance items, those 10 items that have been identified as emergency or urgent needs. That total bucket, if we look at that as a separate financial model, it is something that has been identified as about $100,000, $100,500 of work that needs to be done in the next 12 months. And then there's another bucket of about $130,000 that needs to be addressed in the next 5 years. So when we talk about $250,000 of needed investment in that property, it's not money that we need tomorrow. It's actually staged out over a period of time. And there is a prioritization conversation that probably ought to happen to understand exactly what the sequencing of those deferred maintenance items being addressed would be. That all said, we believe that there are still some opportunities and some options that have not really been fully explored. And we would love the opportunity as a tenants group, or at least as a voice of the organizations that experience what it is to be in that building every single day. We'd love to be part of that collaboration and understand what these additional opportunities might be. And so There are 4 areas that we've actually noodled about a little bit. One is investigating optional sources of income or revenue. We've talked about the fact that there is social service grant block money available. There's work that, and I actually have a call into Mass Development to see what's available there. As a nonprofit organization, CDA Inc. actually has the opportunity to start a grant process with any private giving agency. So there's no reason why we wouldn't be able to pursue those areas as possible funding options. There's also the possibility of investigating some innovative ways of tenancy within the building. When you think about hoteling, you think about incubator space for nonprofit organizations, you think about shared services models. These aren't conversations any of us have really had to explore deeply and understand what the potential there is. What I haven't heard, and what I think we would really like to understand, given the context of the 14,000 people who receive services and the $2.5 million of benefits redeemed that go back into the economy locally, and the value of services that are delivered, what would be the community impact? What's the analysis of that impact on the community if these services either were dispersed or were suddenly no longer available at Attleboro? What if these agencies vacated Attleboro altogether? What would happen to those 14,000 people? What analysis has been done to understand what the impact, downstream impact, would be on City Hall? Is June Fleischman going to have a line out her door? Is Jackie O'Brien going to have a line out her door? There are consequences to pulling out those services. We were going to ask for the opportunity to schedule a walkthrough, but somebody's already suggested that. We really would love for you to be able to see in action what it is that we do individually and collectively at 95 Pine Street. And we were also asking for time to be able to do a deeper discovery process on all of these various options. Establishing relationships with the giving community, donor cultivation, doing a community impact analysis. This is not work that can happen in just a few weeks in my experience. This is work that takes months, 6 months, up to a year, if you're really doing the deep dive appropriately and thoroughly. And so we would just like the opportunity to participate in that and lend our voice and our expertise to the conversation, and also contribute to what that strategic direction would look like for the city of Attleboro. I really believe that we have the opportunity to present a really progressive model of social service, of a social service delivery system that could be a model for the state of Massachusetts. Imagine what the power of multiple agencies coming together could be. We've already shown you what 8 of us have done just in the last year. So.
Thanks. In 1969, this honorable body saw fit to acquire the National Guard Armory, built in 1910, that is now known as the Bartek Recreation Center, providing recreational opportunities for our youth. Since 1988, the city has allowed the first mayor's house on North Main Street to be used as the literacy center to provide adult basic education for our residents. In 1971, the former fire station in the center of town became the Larson Senior Center to provide much-needed services and opportunities for our seniors. In 2018, you saved Highland Country Club. We would like the opportunity to save Richardson School. I'd like to ask for your full and fair consideration of this proposal, as it would be one more example of the city's commitment to provide necessary services for its residents to help improve their quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you. Council Conti.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. My question is, using an income approach to value, if the building was presumed to be $1.6 million, and it had curable deficiencies totaling $250,000, what would your analysis of that building be?
So first of all, let's back it up a little bit. So that $1.6 million is based on an assessment, right? So you're an assessor, right? So you know that municipal buildings aren't necessarily assessed because they don't pay taxes.
You know I have to ask a question and not tell you.
Right. So the other statement that I would make in response to that is that where my office is right now at 8 North Main Street, the Bronson Building, which is 5 stories high, has a fully working elevator, and I don't know how many square feet, but it's huge, just sold for $1.7 million. So you do the math.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Lisa. Oh, Kate, did you? No. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak neither for nor against? Anyone else here to speak neither for nor against?
I'm Brad Pittman. I live at 6 Tanager Road in Attleboro. I had an overcoming question as to how this fit into a 10-year plan for the city. I think the discussions that went on here kind of establish a real good use for it. So I'm not sure that if there is a 10-year plan, this may help fit the building in the city's 10-year plan if it isn't there. That's my only comment.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak neither for nor against?
Hi, my name is Ellen Bruder-Moore-Bromowitz. I'm Vice President at Community Counseling of Bristol County. We oversee the Homes with Heart program, which is also at 95 Pine Street. I just wanted to make one statement, and that is affordable housing. There is no affordable housing that we can find in Attleboro, and I'm very concerned because we work with the homeless. We oversee, Community Counseling of Bristol County oversees the continuum of care for Attleboro, which means we bring in the federal dollars, which covers the Homes with Heart program, as well as all the other federal dollars that come to this area, over close to $1 million that we manage, because we've stepped up to the plate to say we need to bring funds into Attleboro, Taunton, and Bristol County to serve the homeless. And we are working closely with the mayor to develop something to serve, I would say, a center to serve folks and to develop affordable housing. And my concern would be if we're looking at potentially selling this building for affordable housing, well, you know, our folks can't afford to live. Right now, I can't find apartments for anybody because the fair market rents in Attleboro do not allow me to get anyone into apartments. So just to mention that I wanted you to know there are ways to bring other federal dollars into the city to do, you know, and I'm just completing a project in Taunton where we're doing ADA compliance to take care of the lift that we need for one of our buildings. So I do believe there are other ways that we can look and work together to make this a safe and healthy building for social services in Attleboro.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak neither for nor against? Anyone else to speak neither for nor against? Seeing none, we are going to keep this public hearing open to the, at least to the first meeting in August, which I believe is the 20th. So at this time, we're going to continue this public hearing till August 20th. I believe that's, whatever the first meeting in August is, I think it's the 20th. And 20th. She's shaking her head. So it is the 20th. Continue to the 20th. Thank you. Mr. Withers, would you kindly read the...
Certainly. The next public hearing is relative to the following loan order to upgrade the wastewater treatment plant located at 27 Pond Street North in Attleboro. Ordered that $1,500,000. What's that?
You don't need to read. We could waive the reading of the whole thing. We've read it once into the record.
Yeah.
Is there anyone here to speak in favor? Anyone here to speak in favor? Anyone here to speak in opposition? Anyone here to speak neither for nor against? Mr. Chairman, do you see any reason to keep this public hearing open?
I do not, Mr.
Thank you. Mr. Withers, would you kindly read the notice of the next public hearing?
Yes, public hearing relative to the following loan order for water main work on Reed Street.
Hold on one second.
Waive the reading?
Yeah.
Do it
You
again?
can waive the reading.
Okay, waive the reading, okay.
Yes, thank you. Is there anyone here to speak in favor? Anyone here to speak in favor? Anyone here to speak in opposition? Anyone here to speak in opposition? Anyone here neither for nor against? Mr. Chairman, do you see any reason to keep this public hearing open?
I do not.
Thank you. All right, let me go back a couple of pages to see where I'm at here.
Do a note.
Yes, so at this time, I'd entertain a motion to take a 5-minute recess.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are recessed at 9:43. Call the council back to order at 9:53. Sorry, we were exactly 10 minutes and not 5. At this time, we will go on to the reading of the mayor's communication. However, we're going to waive the reading. I'm going to assign by number as Mr. Withers goes. Actually, I'm just going to read it off. How's that? Anybody object? No. 20. I'm going to just assign by numbers. I'm going to go right through the mayor's communication.
I applaud you.
They are misnumbered, so I will call out the number as I go. So dated June 4th. Number 1 is Personnel and Human Services. Number 2 is the Budget and Appropriations Committee. Number 3, Public Works. Number 4, City Property and Claims. Number 5, Budget. Number 6, Budget. Number 7, Personnel and Human Services. Number 8, Zoning and Land Use. Number 9, excuse me, I'm going to go. That's right. Yep, number 9 is also Zoning and Land Use. That matter, the next few are street extensions, street acceptance, I'm sorry, and they do require a public hearing. Council Close, would you like to have a public hearing on July 18th?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Number 10 is also zoning and land use and requires a public hearing for street acceptance. There's 10 of them in this. So we will ask Gary to consolidate comments to all of them, but we will have to call each individual for a public hearing as we're going through this. So
July 18th again.
July 18th again. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. Number 11 is also zoning and land use for a street acceptance, also requiring a public hearing on July 18th.
Yes.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Motion passes. Number 12 is also zoning and land use committee, also requires a public hearing on July 18th.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. Number 13 is the zoning and land use again for street acceptance, requiring a public hearing, July 18th.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. Again, number 14, again, is street acceptance requiring a public hearing on July 18th.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. Number 15 is also a street acceptance for the zoning and land use committee that requires a public hearing on July 18th.
Yes.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. Number 16 is also a street acceptance to the zoning and land use committee that requires a public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
July 18th. Thank you. Now the numbers get funny. Number 14 is actually 17. Is everybody following that?
I had such a hard time.
Yeah, I know. The numbers switched on the page as it flipped.
Yep.
So number 14 on your paper is actually number 17 in the order. Okay? That is also a street acceptance to the zoning and land use committee. Would you like to have a public hearing on July 18th? Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Motion passes. Number 15, which is actually number 18, also requires a street acceptance to the zoning and land use committee. Would you like to have a public hearing on July 18th?
Yes.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Number 19 is Personnel and Human Services. Number 17 here is actually number 20 is to the Public Works. 18 is 21 is Capital Improvements and City Development. 19 is 22 is Capital Improvements and City Development. 20 is 23. That is Budget and Appropriations. 21 is actually 24, Budget and Appropriations. 22 is 25, Budget and Appropriations. 23 is 26, Budget and Appropriations. 27 was 24, is Budget and Appropriations. Any questions or comments with the assignments from the mayor's communication this evening?
Sincerely, Paul Haru, Mayor.
Did you have a question?
I don't know, I thought we skipped one, but I could be wrong, I guess. The 22, that's supposed to be 25? Did we say
Budget
that?
Appropriations.
All right. Pardon me.
Okay. Good?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that appeared to be 10 public hearings.
That is correct. More coming.
Okay.
On to the other communication.
Yes, we received an application for an amended Class 2 license at 957 Washington Street for GMV Inc., doing business as Byrider at 957 Washington Street, dated May 22nd, 2019.
License Committee, please. And Council Dolan, would you like to have a public hearing on that matter on June 18th?
Yes, please.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Bring your sleeping bag.
You're gonna need naps before. Nobody go to work that morning.
Number 2.
I'm sorry. We received a rezoning petition from Sterry Street Auto Sales, Inc. to change the zoning from at 495 Collins Street, Attleboro, which is Assessor's Plat number 20, Lot 399, to general business, where it is currently zoned as industrial and SRB.
Thank you. Zoning and Land Use Committee, please. Mr. Chairman, would you like to have a public hearing on July 16th?
The 16th?
July. July.
Oh, July. Yes.
Thank you. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. We'll have a public hearing on that matter on July 16th.
Just for clarification on that, will that be a joint public hearing with?
That is a
planning?
joint public
Okay.
hearing with the planning board, yes. So we are referring that to
Yep.
planning and land use as well, and the zoning and land use committee.
Okay, and the final one is an affirmative vote from the planning board to recommend the approval of the petition in front of the municipal council to discontinue a portion of Frank Mossberg Drive.
The zoning and land use committee, please.
And that is all.
Thank you. At this time, I'd entertain a motion to enter committee of the whole.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are now in committee of the whole. If there's anybody that would like to bring any matter before the city council or city business, now is the time to do so. George, one of these days. But not tonight.
And not the 18th either.
Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to arise.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. We are moving right along to committee reports, and we will start with Councilor Jackson.
From the docket of June 4th, 2019, reporting for the Public Works Committee, I move to approve the request of the mayor to transfer $3,000 from the Parks and Forestry salary and wages account to the Parks and Forestry vehicle maintenance to purchase a 2-piece landscape dump top for a park and forestry truck.
Second.
Thank you. Motions in order. Any questions or comments?
Thank you. No, we discussed it last week, and it's pretty straightforward.
Great. Any other questions or comments from the council? Seeing none, this requires a roll call vote, and we'll begin with Councilor Jackson.
Ms. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Stepped out.
Oh, sorry. President Cooper?
Yes.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
I have no further business this evening for the Public Works Committee, but I would like to call for a committee meeting at the appropriate time next week.
Great. Thank you. Council Waterman.
Yes, reporting from the Personnel and Human Services Committee from the docket of June 4th, 2019. I move to approve the request of the mayor regarding the Council on Aging's receipt of a grant through the University of Massachusetts Medical School and the federal government for the approved Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP. In accordance with Chapter 1, Section 12 of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro, the mayor asks this honorable body to approve expending of such funds and any future grant amendments for this grant.
Second.
Thank you. Motions in order. Any questions or comments?
No, I think I explained it quite thoroughly last week.
Great. Any other
I didn't get the second, I'm sorry.
Council Dolan.
Thank you.
Oh, was it Reynolds? I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, this requires a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion passes.
That concludes the business of Personnel and Human Services Committee. I call for an adjournment, and we will have a meeting at the next appropriate time.
Excellent. Councilor Conti.
Thank you, Mr. President. Reporting for capital improvement and city development, I have 3 motions to bring before the council tonight. From the docket of April 6, 2019, I move to adopt the following resolution and the following priority items submitted by the mayor as part of the capital improvement plan for fiscal year 2020-2024. Mr. President, I read this in committee. Do I need to read it in front of the full council?
You do not, sir.
Thank you. I'd like to waive the reading.
It's April, just to clarify that, you said April 6th. It's April 16th from the docket of April 16th.
Okay, it is April 16th. My mistake. So,
Who
Mr.
seconded-
President.
Just one second, Council Conti. Who seconded? I'm
Okay.
sorry, thank you.
Okay.
Who did? I didn't hear.
Council Jackson.
Thank you.
So, Mr. President, the Capital Improvement City Development Committee met to form this resolution consistent in the manner of the past. And we individually came up with our individual review of the capital improvement plan, and individually set a priority list of the things that we thought we would like to see funded out of the $500,000 capital improvement line item budget that's been promised after the state certifies the free cash. And we mentioned that in the resolution to the mayor. So when we met to rectify the three independent lists, we found a great amount of coherence among the three councils with one or two exceptions, which we discussed, negotiated, and resolved to this statement for the council. So it is in earnest that we believe the Capital Improvements and City Development Committee believes that this is in the best interest of the city, to recommend to the mayor that the message that with this resolution, if the mayor were to send these down at the mid-year point when the state certifies the free cash, we would expect it to be a ready approval by the council. Needless to say, there's more to be said. There's always more to be said when it comes to capital improvements, and I'm always willing to say it, but not tonight. So we had a $500,000 budget. We came up with a $450,000, $189.38 recommendation, and I do hope that the council it'll meet the council approval and get a ready acceptance. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments about the resolution? Hearing none, this requires a roll call vote, and we'll begin actually with Council Holmes, because that's already.
Okay, Ms. Holmes.
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds.
Yes.
Ms. Dolan.
Yes.
Mr. Cobus.
Yes.
Mr. Conti.
Yes.
Mr. Waterman.
Yes.
Ms. Jackson.
Yes.
President Cooper.
Yes.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. President. From the docket of March 5th, 2019, I move to approve the loan order just mentioned in our public hearing, and I wish to waive the reading.
Yes, sir.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order, Council Conti.
Yes, Mr. President, this is only in front of the council due to a very obscure technicality, and I would urge the council passage.
I agree, and we did, just to supplement your comments, that we did run this by the bond council because there was a discrepancy in the advertising. We re-advertised it, re-brought it before the public, re-bringing it before the council this evening. So that's why we're going through this process. Thank you for your patience as we discovered that we made we thought we were following the right thing, but advertised it incorrectly, so thank you. Any other questions or comments? Roll call vote is required, and we'll begin with Council Jackson.
Ms. Jackson.
Yes.
Mr. Waterman.
Yes.
Mr. Conti.
Yes.
Mr. Cobus.
Yes.
Ms. Dolan.
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds.
Yes.
Ms. Holmes.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
President Cooper.
Yes.
9 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Also from the docket of March 5th, 2019, I move to approve the loan order for $2,700,000, also mentioned in our public hearing this evening, and wish to waive the reading.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any questions or comments?
Yes, I'm impressed with the diligence that bond counsel have to find a minor error in a bond application. Really impressed me. That concludes my comments.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, this requires a roll call vote, and we'll begin with Council Jackson.
Ms. Jackson.
Yes.
Mr. Waterman.
Yes.
Mr. Conti.
Yes.
Mr. Cobus.
Yes.
Ms. Dolan.
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds.
Yes.
Ms. Holmes.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
President Cooper.
Yes.
9 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. President. That concludes the business the Capital Improvement City Development Committee has to bring before the council this evening. We're grateful for your support and behind our resolution, and we look forward to our next meeting at the next appropriate time.
Thank you. Council Cobus.
Reporting for zoning and land use, we don't have any business tonight. Call for a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Excellent. And then
Budget.
Yep.
Reporting for Budget and Appropriations Committee. From the docket of June 4th, 2019, I move to approve the request of the mayor to transfer $18,234 from account 121010005301000 police uniform cleaning for the police department's need for funds for several current projects. To purchase and install 2 workstation desks and filing storage cabinets for the shift commander's office. To purchase a computer and software for the computer crimes detective. To purchase 4 storage cabinets and 2 filing cabinets for the detective's office. And finally, funds to process police recruit medical evaluations. Please transfer the funds to the following accounts. $4,573.58 to account 121010005301001 Police Professional Services. $5,858.40 to account 121010005588015 Police New Computers. $3,978.14 to account 121010005422020 Police Supplies Office Equipment. $3,823.88 to account 121010005301004 Police Medical Consultation.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any questions or comments?
We've discussed this last week in committee meeting. Chief Hagney, when he was here during budget communications, talked about this money. They had originally asked for $50,000 more in their proposed budget. That was cut. This $28,000 this $18,000 will help cover some of those things, including the much-needed computer for the computer crimes detective.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, a roll call vote is required, and we'll begin with Council Jackson. Yeah, Blair.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson?
Yes.
President Cooper?
Yes.
9 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
From the docket of May 21st, 2019, I move to approve the request of the mayor regarding net school spending funds. Since these dollars are part of the city's free cash, the mayor hereby requests this honorable body appropriate $86,370.92 from account 100035900 undesignated fund balance free cash general government to account 1100300H596500 continuing appropriations school department fiscal year 2018 net school spending.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any questions or comments?
This is continuing the practice of giving this money back to the school after, because we have spent more than the requirement for net school spending. When the free cash is certified, it goes back to the general government and the undesignated fund balance. It goes back to free cash. So this is just moving it back to the school departments as has been done in the past.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, this requires a roll call vote, and we'll begin with Council Jackson.
Ms. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
President Cooper?
Yes.
9 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
From the docket of May 21st, 2019, I entertain a motion to approve the request of the mayor regarding library salary needs for the remainder of fiscal year 19 and request a transfer of $17,525.62 from account 1124100057830 Citywide Reserve Fund for transfer to the following: $16,125.67 to account 1610100051100 library salary. $390 to account 1610100051190 library salaries other. $759.95 to account 1610100051420 library night differential. $250 to account 1610100051430 library longevity.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any questions or comments?
I think this one's pretty straightforward.
I agree. This requires a roll call vote, and we'll begin with Councilor Blair.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
Ms. Holmes.
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds.
Yes.
Ms. Dolan.
Yes.
Mr. Cobus.
Yes.
Mr. Conti.
Yes.
Mr. Waterman.
Yes.
Ms. Jackson.
Yes.
President Cooper.
Yes.
9 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you, motion passes.
That concludes my business for the Budget Committee, and I call for a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Thank you. Councilor Dolan.
Reporting for Licenses Committee, I have 4 motions this evening from the docket of June 4th, 2019. I move to approve the application for a hawkers and peddlers license from Chitamon Johnson of 248 South Main Street to have a cart to sell hot dogs, chips, and drinks dated May 9th, 2019.
Second.
Thank you, motion's in order. Any questions or comments?
No comments, we discussed this in committee.
Yeah, a voice vote is required. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, motion passes.
From the docket of May 21st, 2019, I move to approve a new Class 2 license application from Vashon Motor Company, Inc., located at 957 Washington Street, to buy and sell secondhand motor vehicles as well as a repair shop.
Second.
Thank you, motion's in order. Any questions or comments?
We had the public hearing on it, and we also discussed during committee.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, this requires a voice vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you, motion passes.
From the docket of May 21st, 2019, I move to approve the application for a Class 2 license from Daniel Martinez of 47 Sussex Street, Providence, doing business as R&D Auto Sales, to buy and sell secondhand motor vehicles at 116 Dickens Street, dated April 26, 2019.
Second.
Thank you, motion's in order.
We had the public hearing on this in May. I'm sure everybody remembers.
Any other,
I'd
Councilor
like to
Cobus?
call for a roll call vote.
Yeah, we'll do that. Councilor Conti.
Mr. President, I file a charter objection.
Okay. We are done talking about that, and we can move right along.
I'm sorry, excuse me. From the docket of May 21st, 2019, I move to approve the application for a new Class 1 license from JT Automotive LLC DBA Kia of Attleboro and Kia of South Attleboro to sell new cars at 795 Newport Ave, Attleboro, dated May 3rd, 2019.
Second.
Thank you, motion is in order.
We had the public hearing on this as well. Committee.
Yep. Any other questions or comments? This also requires a voice vote. And all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you, motion passes.
That's all the business I have for licenses committee, and I'd like to call for a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Great, thank you. Councilor Conti, would you like to call for a committee meeting for transportation and traffic, here number 2?
I would. If I may, Mr. President, I'd like to announce that the Traffic and Transportation Committee has no business to bring before the council this evening, but we look forward to a meeting at the next appropriate time.
Thank you. Councilor Reynolds.
Thank you, Council Cooper. Reporting for City Property and Claims Committee, I have 3 motions this evening. From the docket of June 4th, 2019, I move to approve that in accordance with Section 1-12 of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro, the mayor requests this honorable body to accept a donation to set up and install an interior-exterior speaker and public announcement system to cover the walking paths and buildings throughout the zoo with an estimated value of $32,309.70 from the Friends of Capron Park Zoo.
Second.
Thank you, that was a tie, and it's gonna go to Councilor Jackson. Tie to Councilor Jackson.
I have no questions, no nothing.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, this requires a roll. Did you have a question, Councilor Holmes? I'm sorry. Oh, okay. This requires a roll call vote, and the roll call will begin with Councilor Jackson. I think.
Oh,
No?
I have Jackson.
I'm sorry. Ms. Jackson, I'm sorry, I'm lost here.
Yes.
Mr. Waterman.
Yes.
Mr. Conti.
Yes.
Mr. Cobus.
Yes.
Mr. Dolan.
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
President Cooper.
Yes.
Again, yes.
I miss me, yes,
Miss-
but I think.
Ms.
what-
Holmes.
Yes, but I think what happened is we both have different forms. Mine says voice vote required.
Mine says roll.
Yeah.
call.
Does yours say voice vote required?
It says voice vote down here.
Mine does
And
too.
mine says roll call, that's why.
Oh, that's why I was confused, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Right, so I
So
was
it-
having a hard time paying attention.
It may be
It says roll
different
call.
anyway.
Okay.
Roll call too. I didn't know why, but I thought,
I'm
okay.
like, okay. Sorry about that, President Cooper.
That's all right. So why don't we,
Thanks for the save, by the way.
what was the
Consensus.
9-0, right?
9-0, yeah.
Motion passes.
From the docket of June 4th, 2019, I entertain a motion to approve the request of the mayor regarding office equipment from the Attleboro Library and request this honorable body declare the following as surplus and available for disposition. There are 10 office chairs circa 1992, and their ID numbers are 04371, 04390, 04391, 04488, 04508, 04514, 04534, 04537, 04538, and 04539. They are all in fair to poor condition and valued at $10 each. There are 2 office task chairs. They're not inventoried, they're broken, they have no value, and there is 1 TTY unit, ID number 04399, circa 1992, and it's in fair condition, $30 on eBay.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any other questions or comments? This also requires a roll call vote and will begin with Council Blair.
Council Blair,
Yes.
Mr. Blair,
Yes.
Ms. Holmes,
Yes.
Mr. Reynolds.
Yes.
Ms. Dolan,
Yes.
Mr. Cobus,
Yes.
Mr. Conti.
Yes.
Mr. Waterman.
Yes.
Ms. Jackson.
Yes.
President Cooper.
Yes.
9 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
From the docket of June 4th, 2019, I move to approve the request of the mayor regarding a donation of computer equipment with an estimated value of $150 from New England State Police Information Network, also known as NESPIN, and ask that in accordance with Section 1-12 of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro, that this honorable council accepts the following generous donation: a Hewitt Packard Z400 workstation, an Intel Xeon 2.4 GHz dual core processor, a 4 GB RAM, a 230 GB hard drive, Windows 7 Pro, a DVD/RW, and a mouse keyboard power cord.
Second. Hi, Karen.
Motion's in order. Any questions or comments?
No.
Voice vote is required. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Opposed? Thank you. Motion passes.
Okay, that is all the business I have this evening, but I have been asked to announce that, or a reminder, that the Attleboro Lions Club is having their Duck Derby on Saturday, June 8th. It's at the Judith Robbins Park. It's 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. They have games, vendors, crafts, train ride this year, and the derby is to begin at 1 p.m. It's $5 a duck, and it raises money for the community help where needed. It's the Attleboro Village Lions. Okay.
Thank you.
And so, that is all the business I have this evening, but would like to call a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Reporting for ordinance, elections, and legislative matters. I have no business this evening, but we'll call for a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Thank you. Council Blair.
I have no business this evening. Public safety, emergency management, we'll ask for a committee meeting next week at the appropriate time.
Thank you. There is no old business. There's one item of new business brought in by Council Parika. She had to leave. She wasn't feeling well, so Councilor, this time I'm going to recognize Councilor Cobus.
Thank you. I move to refer the following matter to the appropriate committee for study and recommendation. Recommended changes to the revised ordinance of the City of Attleboro, Chapter 9, Section 45, as it pertains to dog parks, submitted by Vice President Parika. Section.
You don't have to read the rest of that. We can waive the rest of that.
Okay.
Any comments? Second from anyone?
Second.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none. This requires a voice vote. Oh, wait a minute.
It's going to be referred to
Gotta
committee.
refer.
Yeah, but let's vote first, right? Then I'll refer it to the
Okay.
committee. Because what if it
Yeah.
doesn't pass?
Right. All in
This
favor?
will require I wish all the chirpers would stop chirping. If they stop chirping, we'll get out of here. If they don't stop chirping, we'll be here till 11 o'clock. So, all in favor of the new business?
Aye.
Thank you. Opposed? Motion passes. This
It's
is,
difficult after 10 o'clock.
it is. It gets harder and harder every minute that goes by. This matter will be referred to Ordinances, Elections, and Legislative Matters Committee as, and Ms. Holmes, this does require a public hearing, and would you like to call for that public hearing on August 20th?
Please.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. That's why we went to August. There is, at this time, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned, 10:23.